Hello everyone. I hope the audio and video clear to you. Can you please confirm in the chat? Can you please confirm if the audio and video clear? Acha, okay. So let us start with this session, the revision session of GATE 2022 Architecture and Planning. So the structure for this particular session would be, initially we'll be discussing some important points for these last few days. We are left out with 7 days for the exam. The exam is on 13th of February. So the remaining 7 days or 6 days, you can say. What should be your strategy? What should be your state of mind? What should you do for this last 1 week? That is one thing which we'll mainly address in this particular session. Secondly, there are some key points which are very important for you to remember starting from this point of time for the next 6 days, and also for the day of the exam. There are some important points for before the exam and during the exam as well. We also address those key points which you have to keep in your mind uh, for these parts before and also during the exam. And after that, so that will be the introductory part of this particular session. After the introductory part, we will also look into some important points with respect to the subjects of the GATE architecture and planning. So I'll be discussing some important points with respect to the architecture part. Then we will also, Saurasana will be discussing about the planning part with you. So that is the structure for this particular schedule, the one which we have planned. So without any further delay, let me start firstly by discussing some important points which you have to remember. So the first thing at this point of time, before 6 days before the exam, first and foremost thing which I would suggest you to do to have an effective utilization of these last 6 days. And also the idea of these last 6 days is not to learn something new and suddenly increase your knowledge base. Obviously that would not, obviously you can increase your knowledge base, but not exponentially. You cannot increase, you cannot learn everything in last 6 days, right? So the main focus in these last 6 days should be on controlling or keeping a cool state of mind. That is of prime importance. Before I start with anything, let me emphasize on this. Cool state of mind is something which is the most important thing in your exam. Whatever you have prepared for the last 1 year, if you consider that as some X units of importance, having a cool state of mind is equally important, same X units of importance. So having a cool state of mind, obviously I'm 100% aware of this, that it is very easy to say keep cool state of mind. It is very difficult to do it in practice. So the idea of this session is to just give you a route map in which you can achieve that cool state of mind, or at least try to get a cool state of mind. So first and foremost thing which you have to do, which we think would be correct to at this point of time, is to go through the syllabus, the official syllabus once, a syllabus review, a quick syllabus review. That is something which is most needed at this point of time, because for the last few months you might have been preparing for the exam very seriously, probably spending few hours per day, or spending, some students also spend 6 to 7 hours per day. So you have been preparing for last few months, but it is always important to get a overview of the syllabus at this point of time, because the reason why I'm emphasizing on syllabus review as point number one is because there's a new pattern from this year. I hope you all are aware that you have common part, part A in the syllabus, and then you have part B, in which you have to select either from the architecture part or planning part, right? So the common part, if you know, if you look into the marks distribution, common part has the maximum weightage. Out of the 85 marks for the exam, the Exam will be for 85 marks, that total of 100 marks. 15 marks is fixed for general aptitude, obviously. General aptitude and logical reasoning. Logical reasoning was introduced from the last years of GATE exam. That if you exclude those 15 marks, this obviously is very important again. I'll come to general aptitude and how to address it in some time. So of these 85 marks, if you know, 60 marks is from common part itself. So it is very important that you have a special emphasis on the common part. So in this last moment, I would suggest you take few, it will not take you more than 15-20 minutes to have a quick review of the syllabus. So just go through the common part and look into the points mentioned over there. Do you know all those concepts? Is there something which is left out? If something is left out, spend some time to look into the details on it. But it is very important at this point of time to have a quick syllabus review. And part B has a weightage of only 25 marks. I'm not saying that part B is not important. Obviously, that is very important. But 60 marks is a major chunk of the 100 marks paper. So you have to have a special emphasis on syllabus review firstly, and try to identify the core areas in which you might be lagging in your preparation. For example, when you go to the syllabus review, you might come across with 1 or 2 points which you did not yet look into the details of. So you can spend some time on that. I'm not asking you to sit tens of hours and study. What it's not required at this point of time. You should obviously focus more on what you know, what are your strengths, but have a quick review. At least I would say after today's session, sit for 15-20 minutes and have a quick syllabus review and be done with that today itself, so that you identify the areas, the core areas which you are probably lagging and which you can still study, right? That is point number one. Now, point number two, once you identify, so this is something which is very much required at this point of time. Second point would be the study plan for the next 6 days, right? So prepare a study plan. I'll also tell you some tips which you have to keep in your mind. But before that, it is important that you have a study plan for the remaining 6 days. Not required to study something new, but uh, instead of doing a monotonous study, like say for example, you have 6 days, it would be not correct to take 3 subjects a day and study it for the complete day. Probably see one approach would be I'll study climatology and lighting today and sit for the whole day and study those 2 subjects. I personally think that is not something which will yield you a good outcome in these last 6 days. Rather, I would say prepare a study plan and distribute your time into various categories. You can distribute your time into categories like general aptitude. 15 marks out of 100 is very important, and it is the scoring part, and you all know the level of general aptitude in GATE exam. It is not of that high level. It is very easy to score 15 on 15, not at all difficult. So I would say spend at least half an hour to 1 hour on the general aptitude. Now, would you do in these 30 minutes to 1 hour daily on general aptitude? Practicing the questions. That is very important. If you have not yet done the previous GATE papers, the general aptitude part I'm talking about, you can practice those. There are lots of online sources. You can also access the tests on the Career Avenues app itself. Practice all the questions. So practicing is very important. So dedicate 15 to, don't study. It's not required to sit and study the formula of profit and loss. That's not required at this point of time. But spend half an hour to 1 hour daily on revising. If you have a notes which you have already prepared on general aptitude, you can revise that. Otherwise, you can just take one paper a day, one previous GATE paper a day, and practice those 10 questions. There are 10 questions of general aptitude in each and every paper. So practice. So this could be approximately 30 minutes of activity for on day-to-day basis. That's one thing. Second thing, focus on the areas of the common part. I told you there are some core areas which you would probably identify today itself by reviewing your syllabus, which you might be lagging in the common part. Have a special emphasis on the common part. I cannot repeat that time and again, because it is very important to score well in the 60 marks part this year. So look into those core topics, mostly of the common part, and mostly would be theory concepts probably. There are not much numerical concepts left out in the common part. In today's discussion session also, we will discuss most of the numerical, we'll revise most of the numerical concepts, because given this revision session time constraint, we cannot obviously go into the details of theory of each and every subject. We'll have a quick recall of some numerical concepts, some measurement units, probably those theory points we can cover. So from your end, once you identify some core areas which you think will be, like one example would be standards, NBC standards, CPWD standards. There are CPWD guidelines. Almost on everything, you have CPWD guidelines for landscape architecture as well. You can download that document. So come up with, because landscape is in the common part. So identify the core areas of common part and look into some theory concepts. Now, where will you study these theory points from in this last moment? You can just go through the terminology from NBC. You can look into some standard IS codes. You can look into some publications by CPWD. Like I told you, CPWD barrier-free environment. There is guidelines on that. There is a handbook on landscape architecture. You can look into that. So you can look into the core areas, the theory part of the core areas of common part. That is something which you can do on daily basis, not a complete day. I'm asking you to divide your study plan among these areas. General aptitude 30 minutes, probably 1 to 2 hours on this. And most important would be practicing. Practice the questions, practice tests. You have practice mocks, practice sectional tests, everything available on the ProSat portal of Career Revenues. So practice those questions, practice as many questions as you can. Not only mocks, you can practice the questions of previous GATE as well. If you have still not done something, probably you did only 5 years, last 5 years, you can go to probably 2014, 2012, 2013 question paper also. All these question papers are easily available online on the portal of GATE website itself. So practice the questions, be it previous GATE questions or mocks, whatever you have not yet done, practice those questions so you can have a one hour approximately on practicing the questions. And lastly, giving mocks also. So practicing and mocks, everything can be categorized on one point. So if you give probably a mock, it will take you 3 hours. So it ranges. So you can give a mock probably once every 2 or 3 days, right? Before the exam, at least give 2 or 3 mocks, 2 mocks at least from this point of time. And I would say the mocks which you are going to plan or give, try to do it in the duration of the exam itself. What is the timing of the exam? It is morning 9 a.m. to 12, right? So it is in the morning session, forenoon session. So practice your mocks on the same time. It will give you you might have a different sleep cycle at this point of time. Probably you are waking up. Some people might be waking up at 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock and studying late at night. But try to change that. The last 1 week, it requires a minimum of 1 week to get adjusted to a new sleep cycle. So get adjusted, because you, while sitting in the examination hall from 9 to 12 on 13th of February, you should not be sleepy at all. You cannot afford being sleepy on that day. Obviously, you won't be because of the tense state of mind which you probably would be in. Jitna bhi control karo, you will still be in a tense state of mind. But then, if you keep practicing mocks, at least 2 mocks on that particular time period, it would be better. That is advisable, strongly advisable. And lastly, you can revise. I hope you, in your course of preparation, have been maintaining a running notes, study notes of your own. It is very important that you revise from your own handmade notes, because not taking your friend's notes or something. Whatever notes you're having, study from that. Because when you read one point from your handmade notes, it would give you a big picture of the points which you might have read surrounding that main point. Like you might have written one point, say flux is measured in lumen. You might have come across that one point. But when you read that, you will come across the concepts which probably your tutor or you yourself might have studied while noting down that point. So revise from your own handmade notes. That will really be useful in the last few days. So try to divide your time in these categories. You can come up with some new category, that would be even more better. But prepare a study plan and stick to it. That's point number 2. Prepare a study plan for the remaining 6 days. I would say it's not required for you probably to study a lot of new things. Focus more on revising, focus more on practicing, focus more on what you already know, right? Focus on your strong areas basically. You can allot some time for new things, but more towards what you already know, revising things, practicing things. That will develop an unknown level of confidence inside you, which will help you tackle the pressure which probably might be building up in your mind at this point of time. So have sufficient practice of mocks, have sufficient revision. That will develop confidence. Being confident is the most important thing, which I already told you on the point number 1. So that's about study plan. Prepare a study plan and try to stick to it on daily basis. Now coming to some important tips. Some important tips which you have to remember. Firstly, with respect to the revision part, let me focus on some important tips which you have to remember with respect to the revision part. So number 1, uh, as I told you, you might have be having a handmade running notes, your own notes. Go through that notes and have a special emphasis on the numerical part. Numerical part along with measurement units. Each year there is at least one question in which, in the theory part, in which they will ask you the measurement units of something. Could be from lighting, could be from acoustics, could be from estimation, could be from any topic practically. That would be a theory question based on measurement units. So have a quick revision whenever you're revising. Revise your notes with a special emphasis on the numerical and units part, because the reason I'm asking you to focus on this is something which requires a recall at the end moment of time. You might have studied everything, but it requires a recall at the last period, the last few weeks. So have a revision on those points, numerical part, the units. That's something which you can go through quickly. Some points we will discuss in today's class, today's session itself. Today's session is not only about the tips, but it is also about revision. So we'll also revise some important points of few topics. Obviously, would not practically be possible to revise everything, but I would also say in this revision part, not only from your notes, you can also go through the revision series which is available on a YouTube channel. We have made a revision series. You can find it on the same YouTube channel, Career Revenues YouTube channel, in which we have topic-wise videos. You have history video for you have revision video for history of architecture. A 30-minute video which will give you an overall overview of all the points of history of important points of history of architecture. Similarly, we have a revision video on lighting, acoustics, climatology. So go through these videos also. I think that would be helpful. Go through our video series on revision of GATE exam, which is available on the same YouTube channel. So that is something which you can add into your revision schedule, which you will be planning on. So that said, other than that, you should also be aware that there are the scientific calculator on your revision part. That is also an important aspect. I would suggest you go to the GATE portal, GATE website. There is a link for mock over there. Now that's not a new mock on GATE Architecture and Planning. It is just the last year's paper. That is GATE 2021 question paper. You will find GATE 2021 question paper in the test format available as a mock on the GATE website. Open that, and main idea of looking at that mock on the GATE website or last year's paper on the GATE website in the form of mock is to look into the scientific calculator. Get used to it. Scientific calculator. You are not allowed to carry your own scientific calculator to the exam. An on-screen scientific calculator will be displayed, and that display will stay on for all the questions. It's not like only when you get numerical question, the calculator will pop up. No, the scientific calculator will be available for the complete duration of the exam, and you have to get used to it, because you might probably be using your mobile phone or might be using your own physical scientific calculator all these days. Get used to the online format scientific calculator, how to do calculation with powers, because in acoustics and all, you'll be having numericals like something like 10 to the power of minus 8.5. If you want to calculate that, or log of this, log of 10 to the power of minus 8.5 or 10 to the power of plus 8.5. How to do such calculations on the scientific calculator. Be so look into that. And also when you do sine, cos and tan, there are trigonometric functions also which you use in many topics. Wherever there's a slope calculation or in climatology or in lighting, you will come across with use of use of trigonometric functions. So when you're using trigonometric functions, are you using radians or degrees? There are two options, degrees and radians in the scientific calculator. Make sure you're using degrees. So such minute points, how to use logarithmic functions, how to use trigonometric functions, how to you are you working with degrees or radians, all these aspects which you need to recall once before the exam. The main idea of this point is to not have any stress created during the exam. See, there is one thing of having a cool state of mind. And second is taking care of probable difficulties which you might be facing. If you don't know how the scientific calculator will be, and during the exam you opened it and you're unable to use it, that will unnecessarily create a panic in your mind, which is highly uh, unwanted at that point of time. So you have to get used to the scientific calculator, its format and its usage. So that is something which you need to focus on. I hope you can also make a note of these points somewhere in your notes or on a piece of paper, so that you can pick these points in the next one day itself, or probably after today's session. These things, at least syllabus review, preparing a study plan, and looking into the scientific calculator. I think these three things you can do right away after today's session itself. So don't make any further delay on this point. So that is something which you have to add into with your revision plan. Other than that, I would also suggest you to go through previous gate papers. You might probably have already solved, but I would say at least sit and solve one paper, or just see how or probably on the last day you can do it. When you're not in a state of mind to read something new, you can at least go and practice one gate paper. Even if you have done previous gate questions in general, you can randomly pick up a previous gate paper and try to solve one paper sitting from 9 to 12, right? So look into previous papers. If you have not yet done, this is the correct time, do it. If you have already done, pick randomly one or two papers and try to solve them. That will give you confidence. That will boost your morale before the exam. So look into the previous gate papers if you have not yet done. If you have done also, you can randomly pick up one or two papers, probably an old one also, and look into it. The idea is not, obviously, yeah, some questions are repeated, but the idea is not to have a build up in the knowledge, but to give you confidence. I told you in this last 6 days, it is equally important to have a build up of your confidence, having a cool state of mind. So work on it. Whatever works for you, work on it. So these are some points which I think are probably useful for people. But if you come up with some other new thing which you think will cool your mind, do that without any problems. The most important thing, not only studying but also having a cool state of mind, both are important. So previous gate papers, that is something which you can revise. So these are some revision tips which I thought would be kept in mind in these last few days. Other than that, let us also look into some important points with respect to the exam. During the exam, some important points to keep in your mind. First and foremost, during the exam, so this is for the date 13th of February. We're talking about 13th of February of this particular month, from 9 a.m. to 12 a.m. 12 noon. So during this, there are some important points which students generally have a doubt on. So let me discuss on those points. Point number one, what should be the order in which you attempt the questions, right? This something probably is more towards a on personal basis. One size fits all is not something which works here. Everyone has their own strategy. So if you have been doing mocks for the last few weeks or months, you probably might already know what should be the correct strategy for you, right? So try to look into that. If you have not yet done in these last 6 days, at least attempt 2 mocks sitting from 9 to 12 and come up with your own strategy. What should be your strategy for maximizing your score, right? Ultimately, what is the most important thing after the exam? Maximizing the score. That should be your single main focus. Nothing other than this. Nothing about the college. I want to get into IITs. I want to get into infrastructure design management. No, nothing. I want to get into urban planning. No, not at this point of time. You can think about it. There is a lot of time for it. We will also help you. We have post-gate session after the gate exam. Also, we have post-gate session where we'll discuss about various options, various colleges for various ranks. All that can be done later. But whatever your target is, you will get your target only when you get a good rank. The only thing is, when you get a good rank, you will have a lot of options to select from. You will have 10 options. You can pick whatever is best for you, whatever you think is best. So forget about the college and course at this point of time. Last 6 days, focus only, or also during the exam, focus nothing other than maximizing the score should be in your mind. Maximize what will be the cutoff. Is this paper difficult or easy? Don't let such things come to your mind. Focus should be only on maximizing the scores. Answer as many questions as possible, obviously with confidence, because there is negative marking. So keep in mind there is negative marking in the exam. I hope you are aware that negative marking is in only those questions which are of MCQ type. Negative marking is only in multiple choice questions. And so this comes under exam tip itself. Have this in your mind. All questions are not same in GATE exam. You have 1 mark questions, you have 2 mark questions. You have questions with negative marking, you have questions with no negative marking. So you cannot give equal weightage to all the questions. Probably if there is a question with no negative marking, you can take a risk. Even if you're 50% sure, you can take a risk and attempt it. But when it is an MCQ, you cannot attempt it with a 50% chance, because it will reduce your score, whatever you're scoring, because of the negative score. So focus that, remember that there is negative marking in MCQ questions. There is no negative marking in numerical questions, no negative marking in multiple select questions also. Multiple select question is a new format which was introduced last year, and there is no negative marking in those questions as well. So remember that numerical and MSQ don't have a negative marking. Take a risk if you want to. If you have a probability of 50% too, you can take a risk. But questions with negative marking, be assured on only then answer it, because there is negative marking. So all the questions are not of equal importance. That is one thing, right? Remember that there are 1 mark and 2 mark questions also, and accordingly answer the questions, right? Try to solve as many 2 mark questions as possible to maximize your score. So the ultimate target is maximizing the score, as I told you. That's one point which you can remember during the examination. I was telling you about the pattern to follow to answer the questions. What should be the order? Should I start from the first? Should I start from the last? Should I first attempt general aptitude, or should I first attempt the architecture part? All these are the questions which you probably would be having in your mind. I would say the best strategy, which I personally think, obviously one size fits all doesn't work. I already gave you that disclaimer. Come up with your own strategy if you can. But one point which I think which everyone should keep in your mind, and which I already told this point a lot of times to all my students, and I always keep saying this point to all my students, and that is, whatever the difficulty level of paper be, it will never be that 100% of the questions are difficult. Not a single paper you can find. If you say, oh, okay, 2014 paper was a bit difficult, open the paper and see. No, not all questions. You will not have a single GATE paper in which all the questions are difficult. Each paper will have a distribution of easy, medium, and difficult. You also prepare a mocks. You have a lot of mock tests available on the ProSat portal of Career Avenues. On the Career Avenues portal also, all the mocks also, even the difficult mocks which we make. Even in that, we ensure that there are few easy and medium questions. Not only as, even the GATE papers are that way, right? So remember this in your mind. And I would say, rather than answering following a pattern, you should first go through the complete paper, starting from the first question to the last question. Obviously not without answering them. Answer the question. Don't do a mistake of going through the questions and writing the correct answers on a piece of paper. Some students do this, and that is very wrong to do. If you solve something, write an answer. Answer B over. Second answer will be B. Third answer will be D. Don't prepare that list and think, okay, I will mark everything in the edge. No, don't do that mistake. If you do that, even if there's a slight mistake in the order in which you're writing, and if that will be reflected in the paper, that will really be a huge harm for your score in the exam. So don't do that. Keep on answering. When you read the question paper, keep on answering whatever you already know. So when you read the question paper, starting from the first, probably I told you that there are easy questions. So the easy questions you can target for, those should be your first primary target. Look into the easy questions, answer them. Those which you are 100% confident, answer them. At the end of the exam, you should not. So don't find a lengthy, difficult question and sit on it for 10 minutes. No, first do the easy questions, because that will help you maximize your score. You should not be in a state of mind towards the end that you're left with 10 questions and you have 5 minutes. And then it could be that out of those 10 questions, 5 are very easy questions. So don't leave out easy questions. First target for the easy questions. And if you can solve some medium questions, do those two. Difficult questions, you can come up, take a follow-up on them. That's something which I think will work for most of them. But again, have your own strategy. It's not a thumb rule which will fit for everyone, right? Come up with your own strategy. But yeah, remember this point, that any paper is a combination of easy, medium, and difficult questions. Target for the easy questions. Don't be in a state where you leave out at least a single easy question towards the end. Not even one single easy question should be left out at the end of the examination. That is point number 2 with respect to the exam tips. Third and final, with respect to the, or third point with respect to exam, don't have any favoritism, don't have any favorite subject, don't have a concept of favorite subject in your mind. Absolutely wrong to do that. Don't have a favoritism towards one subject. Don't think, okay, I like the subject of lighting, I will not leave the question of lighting. No, don't do that. It is possible that the question from lighting would be a lengthy one, right? So don't have any favorite subject. Ultimately, no one will ask you which questions did you solve. If you're going for admission into, say, BEM, building engineering management, or project management related courses, no one will ask you, have you solved the project management question in the GATE exam? No one will ask you. So don't have a favorite subject at this point of time. Only single point of focus, maximizing the score. Just have that in your mind. So don't have a favorite subject again, because your favorite subject would end up having only difficult questions in the paper. So don't be in that state of mind. Don't have that point in your mind. So these, I think, are some points which you have to keep in your mind for the portion that is attempting the paper during the examination. Finally, before revision, let me move towards some general tips, general points which you have to remember. Number one, try to eliminate any uncertainties in the course of the examination, or even before that. Exam is in the forenoon session. Exam will start at 9 a.m. But as per the guidelines given on the official GATE portal, you have to reach the examination center 90 minutes before. So you have to reach your examination center 1.5 hours before the exam starts. That is given on the official website of GATE. So reaching 1.5 hours before 9 a.m. right? So that is probably 7:30 a.m. Reaching the examination center at 7:30 a.m. or even if you're taking flight risk and reaching at 8 a.m. also, probably that would be fine. But then try to reach at 7:30 itself. They have mentioned it on the, because we don't know the level of screening at the center. There is a lot of protocols involved due to this COVID scenario. Your temperature will be checked. If your temperature is more than 99.4, probably you would have to sit in an isolation part of the examination center. So be prepared for all these things. Even so, probably you would reach the examination center in a hurry and your body temperature is already high. Probably it is more than 99.4. They might ask you to sit in the isolation part of the examination hall. So if something unknown thing happens, something from the normal happens, people tend to get tensed off it. Don't get tensed. Have a cool state of mind. Anything which will give you a panic at the end moment will affect your GATE score enormously. It will affect enormously. Don't let that happen. So have a cool state of mind. Reach 1 hour, 1.5 hours before the exam starts. So reach at 7:30 a.m. to exam center. If you're in the north part of India, probably you have winters at this point of time. So be ready. So waking up early is something which you're not probably used to at this point of time. So these last few days, get used to. Wake up as early as possible. Probably you will have to leave your house at 6:30 to reach at 7:30 to the examination center. So wake up, start waking up at 5 a.m. from tomorrow, right? Get into that sleep cycle for the last 1 week at least. So be ready with this point of reaching the examination center, and don't have any uncertainties. Plan your travel also very well. Don't think, okay, देखा जाएगा last में. नहीं. Plan everything. Metro से how are you going? Are you going by metro or cab or your personal vehicles? Plan everything, right? That is one point. Number two, so plan your travel and plan your travel to the examination center. All your examination centers are out. Reach your examination center 1.5 hours before the exam, and also plan your travel. That's something which is important. Other than that, I also told you, schedule your sleep cycles. Start waking up early. Get used to reaching or working in the cold winter morning in the morning time. So schedule your sleep cycles and prepare yourself. That's the basic point here. Other than that, remember what are the things you need to carry to the examination, right? Plan everything. Plan everything. It would be wise if you can also plan what you will eat and go. So that would also be better. So plan everything. Don't have any uncertainty. Plan your shit. Just think about what your exam will be and try to replicate it from ground. And try to don't have any unknown surprises at the end moment. That's the basic point. Don't think, okay, I will see. I'll book a cab that day. and probably the cab. So try to plan. So see if the cab availability to your exam center will be available in the morning time. Plan everything. Don't have any uncertainty. So that's something. Plan travel and also anything else. Whatever you can plan and keep it in ready. Don't have any unknown surprises at the end moment. Other than that, what items would be allowed to be carried into the examination center? Items allowed. Items allowed probably are a pen, a simple ballpoint pen or a pencil would be allowed. You need not carry any rough sheets. Rough sheets will be provided to you at the examination center. Just carry pen or pencil. Other than that, you would be allowed to carry the admit card. Most important, don't forget your admit card. Take a printout, have it ready. Physical copy is required. Don't have it in your phone because phones itself are not allowed in the examination center. I hope that is understandable and you're aware of it. So have a printout of your admit card. Have your ID card. ID card details which you have entered during the registration of the gate on the gate portal. The same ID card has to be carried. So carry the ID card. Take a printout of the admit card. Take a pen, a water bottle, and sanitize. The water bottle would be allowed. Mask and gloves would be allowed as per the official notification of the gate portal. These are the items which are allowed, and also only a clear water bottle would be allowed as per the guidelines. So take a transparent water bottle if that's possible. Mask and gloves are allowed, and lastly, a sanitizer bottle would be allowed. These are the things which would be allowed to be carried into the examination hall, and have everything of it. Don't forget water bottle also, because most of the centers would not be giving you water as well. If you're thirsty, that is a unwanted headache at the end moment, right? So to take your own water bottle also, don't forget that. It is also important. So because of the COVID protocols, probably they'll not be providing water at the examination hall. So be ready with that also. So pen, admit card, ID card, water bottle, mask, gloves, sanitizer, these are something which you should carry to the examination center and reach 1.5 hours before the examination. Don't take it lightly. Don't think what would I do reaching 1.5 hours before the extra scribble pad also will be given again. Someone has a doubt, I think, on that. If you have, obviously, you probably will not be completing the full booklet. Even if you're done with it, you will be provided extra. Don't think about paper and all. Carry these things and be prepared for the exam. Plan your day very well. Have these points in your mind. Right? So these are some important ones which you need to keep in your mind for these last few days. Make a routine, prepare a study plan, make a routine, get used to doing hard work at least for this last 1 week. Be in a state of mind which will give you coolness and calmness. That is very important. Calm state of mind, if you have, that is half done. Getting a good score, good get score is half done. That said, as Haneki, you'll just not consider this as an important exam. That also is not correct, right? So I hope you all are already adults and you all know how to have a cool state of mind. So try to get a cool state of mind. So let me start with some revision points now. My lot time, I think, is till 8:30. So for the next 1 hour, I will discuss on some revision points with respect to few subjects of mine. And after that, I will be handing over the session to the planning faculty of ours. Saurabh, sir will be taking up, and he will discuss some important points with respect to planning, housing, landscape, and his topics, right? So that's the planned schedule. But before I start with the schedule, before I start with the revision, let me tell you one point here. There is we at Career Avenues have come up with an offer for this period, probably till the end of March. You can check. This is valid only on the regular classes. If you refer any of your friends, uh, you will get a 1500 cashback, and your friend also will get a 1500 off on the referral, because you uh, are previous student. If you are referring, or I think even if anyone can refer someone, both will get 1500. The person who is referring and the person who is using that referral and coming and joining. This will be valid on live online classes and would also be valid on the regular physical classes which are being conducted at the Delhi center of ours. How this works, how the referral program works. Basically, when your friend is joining into the institute, either into the live online class or the regular class, friend, junior, whoever it is, while joining, they would be filling an enrollment form. In the enrollment form, there is a field for special instructions. In that special instructions, your friend or junior just has to enter your name and probably your mobile number just to track you, so that you and also the person who is filling this enroll form both will get a 1500 cashback. So remember this, you can pass on this information to all your friends. So that's how the referral program would work. So without any delay. Acha, one more point, you can also you can check our website, the link of which will be available in the description of this video or any other video on our YouTube channel. On the website of MentorGate, that is the career revenues portal, you find a job section in which we keep on posting the government jobs. So stay updated with the posts which are available, the government jobs which are being available in the field of architecture and planning. So keep checking that tab also. If time permits, I will show you the portal towards the end probably once, so that you get an idea how the portal is and where to look for the jobs. So one last point, someone asked a question, so it came into my mind. That is with respect to the format, how would you be able to view both B1 and B2? Can I see both the questions of architecture and planning? No one knows. GATE has not clarified on those points, but at this point of time, it is most probable that you will be able to see the questions and only then select, right? That would be the most, because it is written in the brochure that you can make the decision at the exam center itself. So probably there would be an option. Again, let me tell you, this is just our understanding. GATE has not given any clear understanding as to what the format will be. Can you open all the sections? What should be so they did not even upload any mock on the same pattern. But most probably till now in the GATE portal, when you open the exam, even when you open the mock of last year, you will be having two sections here: general aptitude section and the core part, that is architecture and planning. So probably this year you will be having four sections. You will be having general aptitude, you will be having part A, you will be having part B1 and part B2. So that would be the probable format of the exam this year. If this is the format and you are able to see both the questions B1 and B2, there would probably be a selection option, which part to select for marking. Probably that would be given. So uh, read the instructions properly during the exam and have a state of mind in which you're cool and look into these minute points. Is there any selection to be made? Okay, select this. This is my part for attempt. So look into all these details, because those points of clarity are not given or not available at this point of time. This is the first time that we are having part B1, B2, A. So be prepared accordingly, right? So, but this is our understanding at least. This is how it was in geology also earlier. So probably you will be having general aptitude, architecture and planning, B1 and B2, and you have to select which part is to be marked and which part you are attempting. So check for those details during the exam itself, right? Anyways, with that, let us come to the revision part. Let me first focus on the revision of some numerical parts of the common part. I told you, common part is the most scoring part. Common part has 60 marks of weightage. Now, a general analysis, which we have already done. If you look into any paper of last 5 years, any paper, not last year, not 2021, take any paper, 21, 20, any paper of last 5 years, and just see what is the weightage of these topics listed in the common part. We have done that. So you have a syllabus right now, common part, architecture part, and planning part. See whatever is written in the common part and identify all the questions of the common part in any last year's paper from the last 5 years. You will find that the weightage is less than 60 marks, sometimes as low as 40 marks also. So there will be a drastic change probably this year in the distribution of the marks with respect to the subjects. So that's the reason I started today's session by telling you, start with the syllabus review. There can be topics which probably were considered not very important previously, but are becoming very important at this point of time for this year. So have that in mind. Common part is the scoring part, 60 marks maximum weightage, and there are not many numerical topics left out in the common part. No lighting, no illumination, no acoustics. All these are numerically strong, no structures. Excuse me. All these are the numerically strong subjects historically seen in the GATE paper, but all these are in the architecture part now, not in the common part. Don't get panicked. Obviously, nothing to panic at this point of time. That's the reason I asked you to have a syllabus review. Identify the numerical parts of the common part, includes topics like estimation, valuation, topics like project management, landscape, also has numericals, housing, urban housing. Urban housing also is numerically strong subject. Other than that, you have topics like water supply. There are numericals in the water supply as well. Fire safety. So try to identify. These are just a list of when you also prepare your own review of the syllabus, you will also identify probably few other list of topics. So list them. Numerically strong subjects and revise all the numerical concepts related to those topics. Right. So, anyways, let me revise few important points with respect to some of these numerically strong subjects. Landscape housing will be discussed by Saurav sir in the second part of this session. Let me discuss firstly about estimation and valuation. As far as estimation is considered, you can start by looking into the basic formula with respect to basic geometric forms, like about cylinders. What is the surface area of a cylinder? What is the volume of a cylinder? Of a cuboid? You can actually start with the most simplest of all. So look into the geometry of solids. I'm not revising them. I'll just make a note. You probably would always already have these points in the running notes. So you can have a look at it. So, solid geometry in terms of surface area and also volume. Look into these formulae. Don't leave out some figures like frustum probably, volume of frustum. So look into such things as well. Frustum of a pyramid. There are numerous, even in last to last year, 2020 question paper, there's a question in which you had to apply this formula, volume of a frustum of a pyramid, right? So look into these formulae, look into these concepts, the volume of such figures, look into those under the estimation part. Other than that, you can mainly remember two important concepts and or three important points under estimation. First and foremost, area of any surface, area of a surface with uniform width. Area of surface. If someone, if there are any questions, because the chat would, I will look into, I'll address your questions if there are any towards the end of my part, right? Give me a few minutes, let me revise some points. I'll address your questions if you have any. At least few questions I will address. Even if you're having any doubt after the session also, you can drop your doubts in the comments of our YouTube video. This session will be available as a recorded video on the YouTube channel. You can drop your comment over there. We'll try to respond with that. Or you can also get in touch with any of our social media handles. You can text us on the Facebook as well. We'll try to respond over there also. So let us, with that clear, let us move towards the revision. Area of a surface with uniform width is given by the length of the center line, multiplied by the uniform width. Length of the center line multiplied by the uniform width. What are the applications? What are the points where probably you would be applying this? If you're having a room, probably you're having a, there is this question asked multiple times in GATE exam on water tank. Water tank dimensions, internal dimensions will be given and wall thickness will be given. You need to estimate something related to it. So water tank or say a room, whatever it is, this is basically a wall structure of uniform width. The width is uniform. Say that uniform width is W. So that is uniform width W. Length of the center lines L into W. That will give you the area. So if you want to find out this area of wall footprint, this complete area, how will you find out this area? Basically, the length of the center line. So you need to find out the center line dimensions here. Always remember the center line dimensions will be equal to the inner dimensions plus wall thickness. Inner dimensions plus one wall thickness, half wall thickness to the left, half wall thickness to the right. So adding wall thickness to the inner dimensions will give you the center line dimensions. Center line dimensions. Find out the center line dimensions. From that you'll get the total length of the center line. Total length of the center line multiplied by the uniform width will give you the footprint, the area of the footprint. This can be asked in the form of DPC, dam proof course. While estimating dam proof course has been asked in GATE exam multiple times. To estimate the quantity of dam proof course, you basically find out the area of wall footprint itself. So that is length of the center line multiplied by the uniform width. So this is one application. Other than that, if you want to estimate arch, probably say you want to, there is a semicircular arch or a segmental arch, any form of arch probably. To estimate the area of this particular arch, then also because arch also has a uniform thickness like this W, length of the center line, length of the center line L multiplied by the width. So this is one other application. So any of such particular application, you have to use this formula, length of the center line into uniform width. That will give you area. That's point number one, which is important under estimation. Point number two under estimation is with respect to volume. Volume of any prismatic solid. Prismatic solid is something which has a uniform cross-sectional size or cross-sectional area. So volume of a solid, volume of a solid with uniform cross-sectional shape and size. Example would be a cylinder. Wherever you cut a cylinder, you will get the same cross-sectional size, a circle, right? So any solid figure with a uniform cross-sectional shape and size, you have the same, you have to use this formula. Volume is equal to the uniform cross-sectional area multiplied by the length of it, the length of the push of that cross section. So how do you develop such uniform shape figures? How do you get prismatic solids? So probably you create a cross section and pull it in one dimension to some length L. Okay, this is the length L. This is the area pi r square probably for circle, right? So for cylinder, what is the volume of cylinder? It is basically the area pi r square into h, area of the cross section into the length of it. So this is something which works. This also works for walls. If you want to estimate the wall volume of brickwork in this particular water tank, you need to find out that area of footprint multiplied by the height. That will give you the volume of brickwork in the water tank. This question was asked 2 times in the last 15 years in GATE exam. So finding out the area multiplying with the height, that will give you the volume of the figure. Can anyone tell me how do you find out the length of the center line in a semicircular arch? If I say the radius is r, the radius of the center line is r, how do you find out the length of the center line? If the center line radius is r, what will be the length of the center line in a semicircular arch? It will be pi into r, right? Total circumference is 2 pi r. Divide that by 2, make it into half, pi into r, right? That's correct. So that's how you solve center line in such geometric figures with a arch form. Anyways, so that's a quick revision on the volume part. And third and final important point with respect to estimation, you generally get questions with respect to even last year's exam, last year 2021 paper. There was this question on estimating the number of tiles required. So when you get questions like number of tiles required, number of paint buckets required, number of roofing tiles required, volume of paint required, the concept is always same. Even number of bricks required. So whenever you want to find out number of units required, when you get questions like finding out the number of units required, you basically will use the concept total, say for example, tiles. If I give you an example of tiles, total area of tiles, total area of tile work divided by area of each tile. That's how you will find out number of tiles required, number of paint buckets required, or volume of paint required. Same thing. Total area to be painted divided by area covered by 1 liter. That will give you the liters of paint required. So same concept you apply. This is also something which is very frequently used in the estimation part. This is basically a simple unitary method. If one apple will cost you 10 rupees, how much will be the cost of 100 apples? 100 into 10. Same thing. Or if I say 100 apples will cost you 10 rupees, what will be the cost of one apple? 100 divided by 10. Same thing. Uh, Total area of tile work divided by area of each tile will give you number of tiles. Total volume of brick work divided by volume of each brick will give you number of bricks required. Total area of paint work divided by the area coverage per liter will give you liters of paint required. So this is also something which is frequently used in the estimation part. So remember these basic points with respect to estimation. Moving on to the next part, that is valuation. So looking into valuation part, under valuation, real estate valuation is under the common part. It is in the housing part as per the new syllabus. So in this particular question, in this particular concept, in this particular topic of valuation, it is important to recall concepts like capitalized value of an asset. There is a concept called as capitalized value of an asset. Capitalized value of an asset is basically also called as net present value in perpetuity. Net present value of an asset. Present value of an asset in perpetuity. This is also another term for the same thing. Capitalized value of an asset, or value of an asset using income capital. That's also one other term. You can also call this as value of an asset using income approach. Income capitalization approach. This also is same. All these terms, whenever you come across such wording in the question, don't get confused. Everything is the same. They are basically asking you the capitalized value of an asset, which simply is given by net annual rent derived from the asset, net annual rent divided by the interest rate or discount rate. Interest rate. Sometimes it is also given as discount rate in the question. Don't get confused if you come across the term discount rate. Use that here. The net annual rent divided by discount rate or interest rate will give you the capitalized value of an asset. Now, what is net annual rent? Net rent is basically gross rent minus outgoings. Gross rent minus the total outgoings. Outgoings include maintenance charges. So this will give you net annual rent. Gross annual rent minus the outgoings will give you net annual rent. So use that in the numerator. Interest rate will be given to you in the question. Use that in the denominator. That will give you the value of an asset using income capitalization approach. Sometimes year's purchase will be given. Remember, 1 upon interest rate is called as interest. 1 upon interest rate in the concept of valuation is called as year's purchase. So you can also use this in capitalized value of an asset. You can use this formula: net annual rent multiplied by year's purchase. Why? Year's purchase is nothing but 1 by R, 1 upon interest rate. So it is either net annual rent divided by R or net annual rent multiplied by year's purchase. Why? Year's purchase is nothing but 1 by R. So this is something which you can remember. Multiple GATE questions have been asked on this concept also in previous GATE. Other than that, you can also remember about the valuation by cost approach. There is one other approach of valuation of buildings, that is valuation by cost approach. Under valuation by cost approach, value of a building is basically given as land cost. Land cost is taken as the present land cost because land value doesn't depreciate. There is no depreciation in the land value. In coming of valuation by cost approach, you basically take value of an asset, value of an asset, value of an asset using valuation by cost approach is taken as land cost because land cost is directly taken without any depreciation because it is not a asset where wear and tear happens, right? Whenever an asset's life will reduce, any asset which will have life will depreciate. If I have a water bottle has a lifespan of say 2 years, the value will depreciate. Simple example here, building will depreciate because building has a lifespan. Car will depreciate because car has a limited life, 15 years. So you don't have life for land. It is an eternal thing. When till the time earth will stay, you will have land, right? So land cost is not something which depreciates. So land cost plus the present value of the building, present value of the building. How do you find out present value of the building? This portion. Present value of the building is calculated by the initial value of a new building minus the depreciation. Initial value of the building minus depreciation. In the context of valuation, this can also be called, this term can also be called as book value of the asset. So this is something which you can find out. Valuation by cost approach. Value of the asset is calculated as land value plus the present value of the building, which is book value of the building, which is basically value of a new building when it was so probably say you have a building constructed 5 years ago. So that new building when it was constructed 5 years ago, or if you construct a new building at this point of time, so that is that value minus the depreciation for given number of years. If the building is constructed 5 years ago, you have to subtract the depreciation for 5 years. So this information related to the depreciation will be given to you in the question. If you're having a straight line method, if they say depreciation is 1,000 rupees per annum or something like that, you will take straight line method. If percentage is given, then you use diminishing balance method. You need to remember these various methods of depreciation. So you need to look into the details of straight line method, SLM, straight line method of depreciation, and diminishing balance method of depreciation. These two things you should know, or you can call this as constant rate depreciation. Constant rate depreciation. So you have to know the process to calculate the depreciation value in straight line method and also constant rate depreciation. Both have been asked previously in GATE. You need to have information on both these points. So if you're using this constant rate of depreciation, you can directly find out book value like this. If I take constant rate depreciation, book value of the building is calculated as the initial value multiplied by 1 minus r raised to the power of n, right? Initial value multiplied by 1 minus r raised to the power of, where r is the constant rate given for the depreciation, n is the number of years for which you're depreciating, right? So that is the constant rate depreciation. Straight line method is pretty simple. You probably already have a awareness on that. So look into these details once. Remember these basic points with respect to valuation. So that's a quick recall on some basic points with respect to estimation and valuation. Let us discuss some basic points. I'm focusing on the numerical part of common portion here, right? Let me discuss some points with respect to the project management part as well. Under project management, point number 1, remember some basic pointers, basic information with respect to critical path method, with respect to networks in project management. Always remember project duration or project completion time will always be equal to the length of the critical path. What do I mean by this? Say in a network, A, B, D, E is critical path. As an example, say this is the critical path in the given network. You all know how to identify critical path, I think, by this point of time. We do forward path calculation, backward path calculation to identify the critical path. Once you get the critical path, if you add the durations of the critical paths, A is of duration 5 days, B is of duration 3 days, say D is of duration 2 days, and E is of duration, say 4 days. So you add all these, you will get 14 days. This length of the critical path will be equal to project completion time. This basic point you have to remember. Length of the critical path is exactly equal to the project completion time. This is one trick which sometimes becomes useful when you're solving some networks. Be remember in this revision session, I'm not discussing how to draw a network and those basic points, but have sufficient practice on it. Have practice on drawing networks. So what are the things you need to learn? Learn how to draw a network. You need to know both activity on arrow diagram. You need to know activity on node diagram, both, because sometimes in GATE exam, they themselves will give you the network and you don't know which network they will give you. There have been mostly in exam, they gave activity on, if you look at last 10 years, whenever network was given, 90% of the ones, exception for one time, they always gave activity on arrow diagram only. But once they gave activity on node diagram as well in GATE 2020. So you need to have an idea on both the network diagrams. So you need to learn how to draw a network diagram. In the network diagram, you do forward and backward path calculations. So you need to do, you know how to do forward and backward path calculations. Once you do these calculations, you need to know how to identify the critical path. Identify the critical path. And finally, you need to know the float calculations. Under float calculations, you need to know total float, free float, independent float, and interfering float. You need to know all these three things: independent float, a total float, free float, independent float, and interfering float. Interfering float is pretty simple. It is the difference between the total float minus free float. Total float minus free float is called as interfering float. You interfere into the float of the next activity basically in this. So remember these float calculations, but this is important under critical path method. Learn how to draw the network, do the forward backward path calculation, identify the critical path and float calculations. From this area, a minimum of 2 marks is asked generally itself in the GATE exam. This year, because of the change in the pattern, there could be a higher weightage also for the subject of project management. So learn these concepts, be prepared, don't leave out. This is very simple. If you learn once, you can easily answer, because the level of questions asked from project management are not at all difficult in the GATE paper. They're pretty simple. So learn this process. I would say, even if you don't know at this point of time, spend some time, like it would not take you more than 1 hour or so to learn. So learn this and be prepared for the examination. So this is point number 1, which you have to keep in your mind. Point number 2, which you have to keep in your mind with respect to project management, under the critical path method itself, is the calculation of float calculations. Remember, let me just tell you some pointers how to remember float calculations. With respect to float calculations, as far as total float is considered, in total float, we consider that the successor activity, the immediate successor activity will start at late start, and you will consider that the predecessor activity will complete at early finish. Right? Remember this point, that the next activity will start late and the previous activity will complete early, right? So that is total float. Or you can also say the present activity that will start early, complete late, right? So remember that is total float. That's a point with respect to total float. With respect to free float, remember the definitions, and then remember, I'm not giving you the formula here because I personally think remembering the concept, the definition, that is far more better than by hearting the formula of total float, free float or something, right? So remember these points. Successor will start late, predecessor will complete early. That is free float. That is total float. In free float, there is a condition that the present activity, the given activity will start early. That's basically predecessor will complete at early finish. Only then you will start, the given activity will start early. Given activity will start, you can also replace this predecessor activity will complete at early finish. You can change this into given activity will start early. Both will mean the same. दोनों का meaning same है. Given activity will start early or predecessor activity will finish at its early finish. Both meaning is same. So given activity will start early and the successor activity also will start early. Successor activity will start at early start. This is the difference actually between total float and free float. If you know how to calculate total float and free float, it is pretty simple to calculate interfering float. Interfering float is simply the subtraction total float minus free float is called as interfering float. Finally, independent float considers a float extra. What is float or slack? Float or slack is basically the extra time you have on an activity. So independent float is basically a float in which you consider that you're not disturbing the float of other activities. So the next activity will start at its early start. The previous activity will complete at its late completion. So the successor will start early and the predecessor will complete at its late finish. This consideration will give you a minimum available time. Subtract the duration from it, you will get independent float. So remember these concepts, have these points beside you, go through the formulae once, try to understand the concept, have sufficient practice. So remember float calculations with respect to project management. And finally, under project management, let me discuss about the PERT point, PERT, Program Evaluation Review Technique. I'll just tell you two important points under this. Point number one is with respect to expected time. Expected duration in PERT is given by optimistic time estimate plus 4 times most likely time estimate plus pessimistic time estimate divided by 6. One of the most frequently asked numerical under project management in GATE exam. Remember this as the first point under PERT. Second point under PERT you can remember is variance. The formula for variance of an activity, variance is denoted by sigma square and it is given by TP minus TO whole square upon 36. This is the formula for variance. This is the second important formula which you can remember under PERT. Third important point which you can remember under PERT is variance of an activity or variance of a network. Variance of a project is given by sum of, it is given basically by variance of the critical path. Variance of a project is given by variance of a critical path. Remember, there can be multiple critical paths also. If there are multiple critical paths, you need to identify the variance of each critical path and take the maximum one in the calculation purpose. So variance of critical path is basically given by sum of variances of critical activities. Critical activities of a critical path. So this is also an important third point which you can remember. How to find out, someone asking what is variance of a project, add the variances of the critical activities. So take all the critical activities, use this formula to find out variance of the critical activities, each and every activity, add all those variants and get variance of the project, which is denoted by sigma p square. Finally, fourth important point, standard deviation of a project. Standard deviation. There was a theory question also once in GATE exam on the standard deviation of a project sigma p is given by square root of the variance. Square root of variance. That is also something which you can remember with respect to PERT. So these are some basic pointers which you have to keep in your mind with respect to program evaluation review technique under project management. So that's a quick revision of the project management and estimation and valuation part. Let me discuss some pointers with respect to water supply as well. Let me tell you the pointers important pointers, quick revision of some points with respect to water supply. Firstly, you can remember some standards. Standards of water supply rate. Firstly, rate of water supply is calculated in LPCD. LPCD stands for liters per capita per day. And for, say, for towns, as per URDPFI guidelines, the required water supply rate is given as 70 LPCD. And for cities, it is given as 135 LPCD, liters per capita per day. And for mega cities, it is given as 150 LPCD. So remember these basic standards with respect to water supply. Other than this, I would also suggest you to go through the NBC standards, NBC 2016, volume 2. There is a topic called as water supply under the services part. In this, there is a table given for water supply requirement of various buildings. Various buildings like for hospital, what is the required water supply rate? Don't by heart everything, don't mug up everything, but have a look once. Have a look once ka kya matlab hai? Have a generalized idea. Generally for buildings, okay, this is the range. So you can take a educated guess if the question ends up from that part. Don't by heart a lot of things, don't mug up a lot of things because that will create unnecessary pressure. But yeah, depends at your personal level. If you're good at remembering things, I would ask you to remember. If you can read once and remember something properly, do that. If you think it will build up unnecessary pressure in your mind, don't mug up unnecessary things. Have a glance once to have a generalized idea, right? That is a basic on water supply requirements. Other than that, with respect to water supply, you can remember terms like what is total head of lift. Remember in water supply, whenever you come across the term head, remember that it has something to do with height. Examples for this would include velocity head. Velocity head is also a height. It is measured in meters. This is a previous GATE question. What is the measurement unit of velocity head? It is meters. Now you may ask me, are questions repeated in the GATE exam? Yeah, they are. If you see, if you look into one question, who is the landscape architect of Gardens of Palace of Versailles? This is something which was asked 4 times in last 30 years. So it is one of the most repeated questions. There are questions repeated in the GATE exam also, and Lenotre is the answer for that. So you have questions repeated, obviously, but the idea of having an idea of previous GATE question is not an expectation that it will be repeated, but an expectation that concepts related to that may end up in the examination. So remember, velocity head is measured in meters. Total head of lift also is a height is measured in meters. So whenever you come across the term head, remember that it has to do something with height. In fact, slope is basically, slope calculation is something which is very frequently asked in exam. Any of the topics can be asked under water supply, can be asked under sewerage, can be asked under some other topic also, ramp probably. There was a numerical on ramp, slope calculation also. I'll discuss about slope in a while. But remember in water supply, slope also is called as head loss per unit length. Is called as head loss per unit length as in height loss per unit length. For unit length traveling in the horizontal direction, how much head is being lost, how much height is being lost, that is slope. So it is also, if you come across the term what is head loss per unit length, don't get confused. They're basically telling you about the slope here. So remember the term head has to do with height. That is something which you have to remember. Other than that, remember what is total head of lift in water supply. In water supply, say this is a water tank over a building, and say this is a pump which is used to pull water from an underground sump. So the height from the sump level to the pump level, this is called as suction head or suction height. And then the height difference from the tank level to the pump level, this is called as discharge head. Total head of lift in water supply is calculated by, total head is calculated by adding discharge head, because what is the total height for which the pump is working? It is working on discharging the level. It is working on the suction part, suction head, and you also add the friction loss, friction head. Adding these three things will give you the total head of lift. So when you're buying a water pump, for example, if you're buying a water pump in a given for a given building, what is the height? So when you go and buy 1 horsepower, 2 horse, whatever pump you're buying, when you buy it, what is being considered? The total head, total height for which the pump will work. That is to be calculated. So you add all these three things: discharge head, suction. For example, say the suction head is 2 meters, discharge head is 6 meters. I will not go and buy a pump for working of 8 meters. 8 meters is not the total. Why? The pump also needs to overcome some friction. So you add that as well. Friction head also is added to this. So remember, total head is sum of these three, and the term head in water supply relates to height. This is also some basic point which you can remember with respect to water supply. And finally, with respect to pump requirement, pump power, power of the pump required, the calculation of power of the pump required can be asked in GATE exam. How do you calculate the power of the pump required? Power firstly is calculated in watts. So what should be the wattage of the pump you're buying for a given water supply system or water storage system? It is calculated basically in terms of rate of consumption of energy. What is power? Rate of consumption of energy. So energy is basically M into G into H, because the energy consumed by the pump is being stored in the water in the form of potential energy. So we use the formula for potential energy, M into G into H, divided by the time. This basically will give you the power requirement. If there is an efficiency of the power of the pump given, you have to consider the concept of efficiency also. But if efficiency is not given, this is the power requirement, right? Yeah, Shivani, if there's a numerical, friction head will be given to you in the question. Don't worry. There's no approach to calculate it numerically as such, at least at GATE architecture level, right? So power of the pump required is given as M into G into H upon T, or to rephrase and make it even more correct, this is not power pump, but this is power, not power of the pump directly, because power of the pump needs to consider the aspect of efficiency also. You can say this as the power requirement to fill a tank. Total power requirement to fill a tank is calculated as M. M here is mass of the water stored in the water tank. If the water tank is 10,000 liter capacity, mass will be 10,000 kg. Because for water, 1 liter and 1 kg are equal. So mass of the water multiplied by G. G is acceleration due to gravity, taken as 10 meter per second square or 9.8 meter per second square. Value will be given to you in the question. So G is acceleration due to gravity, 9.8 meter per second square. Value will be given in the question. If it is not given, take 9.8. H here is the total head of lift. T here is the time required to fill the water tank. Mass of the water in the water tank, acceleration due to gravity, total head of lift. T is the time required to fill the water tank. Using this, you can find out the power requirement to fill the tank. If efficiency is given, you will also add that into, you will also multiply the efficiency to get the actual power of the pump required. Someone is asking me what is the measurement unit for friction head. Remember again, in every term where you find head, the measurement unit will be meters. Discharge head is taken in meters, suction head is taken in meters, friction head also is taken in meters. Friction loss, you can also call it as friction loss, right? So the idea is, if the suction head is 2 meters and discharge head is 6 meters, you don't buy a pump to work for 8 meters. Rather, you will buy a pump to work for 9 meters. Why am I taking that 2 meters extra? That extra 2 meters is to overcome the friction, right? So remember this in the exam. Someone also is asking on mass. Yeah, mass has to be taken in kilograms. Acceleration due to gravity is meter per second square. H has to be taken in meters. Time has to be taken in seconds. If you do that, you will get your answer in watts. Everything in SI system. Take mass in kilograms, acceleration due to gravity in meter per second square, height in meters, time in seconds. Then you will get your answer in joule per second, that is watts. Remember this. Uh, Next point, let me discuss about two important formulae with respect to velocity. H is the suction head. Ashik Chakraborty, no, H is the total head of lift. It is added, it is got by adding discharge head, suction head, and friction head, all the three, right? Anyways, moving on. Let me tell you two important formulae with respect to the velocity of flow. Actually, I told you friction head would be given to you in the question. Depends on the material of the pipe, right? So if it is a CI pipe, if it is rough, its friction head will be different. So there's no mathematical approach as such which will be following. It should be given to you in the question. Um, yeah, Selva, it is possible that you have suction head of zero also. The water itself is directly coming at this level. You will only have discharge head, no suction head there, right? Anyways, moving further, let me tell you about velocity of flow. There are two important concepts with respect to velocity of flow. All these are under common part. I tried to focus on the common part in this revision session. I will tell you at the end where you can revise the other concept, because we did not discuss structures in this revision session. We did not discuss lighting and illumination or acoustics in this session. I will guide you where you can find a quick revision of these concepts also. Don't worry. But let me tell you one last point with respect to velocity of flow here. With respect to velocity of flow, there are two types of flow. You have piped water flow or closed pipe flow. There are two types of flow for which you find out velocity. Velocity of flow V is calculated. Two types of flow. You have closed pipe flow. Closed pipe flow is generally seen in water supply. Closed pipe flow is something where the supply pipe is closed and the cross section is completely filled with liquid. So if this is a pipe, the complete cross section is filled with liquid. There is no empty space. Like if say this is a water supply pipe, water is not flowing till this level. It is filling the complete cross section. That is called as closed pipe flow. Generally assume closed pipe flow for water supply systems. Second type of flow is open channel flow. Open channel flow is generally seen in sewer systems or sewer lines. Something like, say, you have a rectangular sewer line like this. So it has an open channel flow. The top is open. There is nothing touching on the top, right? So this is open channel flow. If you're having closed pipe flow, for closed pipe flow, we use Hazen-Williams equation to find out the velocity of flow. Velocity of flow in Hazen-Williams equation for SI units. For SI system, it is, if you want the answer in meter per second and take everything in SI system, then you use this formula 0.849 into coefficient of friction into hydraulic radius to the power of 0.63 multiplied by slope or head loss per unit length raised to the power of 0.54. However, it's not very important to remember this because direct numericals based on this formula have never been asked in GATE exam. However, you need to remember what is hydraulic radius. V here is velocity. C here is the roughness coefficient or Hazen-Williams coefficient of the pipe. Depends on the material of the pipe. RH here is hydraulic radius. And S here is slope of the pipeline. So if using these terms, you can find out the velocity of flow in Hazen-Williams equation. Generally, theory questions have been asked with respect to Hazen-Williams coefficient. In addition to this, you can look into what is Hazen-Williams nomogram. You can look into something called as, take some time and look into the details of Hazen-Williams nomogram. Look into the details of this nomogram. Theory questions have been asked with respect to the nomogram in GATE exam from Hazen-Williams equation part. However, from the Manning's equation for open channel flow to find out velocity, so in closed pipe flow, we use Hazen-Williams equation. Similarly, in open channel flow, to find out the velocity of flow, we use Manning's equation. And there have been numericals with respect to numerical questions were asked in previous GATE with respect to Manning's equation multiple times. Let us look into the formula for Manning's equation. Velocity is given by 1 upon n into n is the Manning's coefficient of roughness, will be given to you in the question. Hydraulic radius to the power of 2 by 3 multiplied by slope raised to the power of 1 by 2. That's the formula for Manning's equation. In both the cases, RH is hydraulic radius. So how to find out hydraulic radius? RH is hydraulic radius. And hydraulic radius, it is calculated as wet cross-sectional area divided by wet cross-sectional perimeter. Wet cross-sectional area divided by wet cross-sectional perimeter will give you hydraulic radius of the given flow. So here you need to be slightly careful while working with open channel flow. Say this is a rectangular cross-section. Say this is a rectangular cross-section and this is the flow, liquid flow. Wet cross-sectional area is pretty simple. You will take this complete area, length into breadth of the flow, that will give you wet cross-sectional area. As far as wet cross-sectional perimeter is considered, you will add only the wet surfaces, this and this. There is no wet perimeter on the top in this case. In open channel flow, you get perimeter by adding this length, and this width. L plus W. This will be the wet cross-sectional perimeter. Wet cross-sectional area will be L into W, right? So remember that the top surface is not added in the wet cross-section perimeter, only in our open channel flow. In a closed pipe flow, you take the complete perimeter, whatever shape it is. Sometimes there was a numerical in 2019, I think, or 2020, where they gave an open trapezoidal drain, trapezium. You need to remember the area of trapezium, half H into A plus B. So remember the formula for area of simple figures, including trapezium and all also. So this is the concept of Manning's equation. Before I end my part, let me tell you, for the architecture portion at least, the climatology, revision on climatology, lighting, structures, you can look into the revision series as I told you in the initial part itself, that you can, in the same YouTube channel in which you're viewing this video right now, there is a revision series of videos on the YouTube channel. You can have a look at those. Each video will probably be from 25 to 30 minutes long. 30-minute video, a full overview of history of architecture. So look into the revision series of all the sections given on the YouTube channel of us. That will be a good revision source at this end moment of time. Remember, the idea of this session was to revise few concepts. What more important was to focus on these generalized points which I told you as an introduction. Keep those points in mind. I hope you will go to the examination hall in a cool state of mind. That is the most important and absolutely necessity thing at this point of time. Work on having a cool state of mind, whatever works for you. Be calm, be confident on your preparation, and that will really help you a lot in getting a good score in the examination. With that, let me hand over the session over on to Saurabh sir. He'll be discussing some important concepts with respect to topics like urban planning, urban housing, and some other landscape architecture, some other topics. He'll be discussing some important points. Again, don't forget to view onto our YouTube channel for the revision videos. Also, you can check our website where you can go through the online job posts as well. So me let me give if you give me a moment, I think I can try to show you the portal also. I'm not sure if you're able to see our portal here. You can find out on the government jobs tab over here. You can see all the updated government jobs for the posts of architects and planners in the field of architecture and planning. So keep visiting over here to get the updated details. I would say preparing for GATE exam should not be looked at as an isolated point. Rather, you can have a look at the overall preparation for all these exams as well. So keep attempting all these exams. That will help you be prepared for all the competitive exams. So keep be in a state of mind of writing exams. That's very important for the next few years, at least after your colleges. So with that, let me end my part. You can again continue watching the same link. After a few minutes, Saurav sir will be continuing the remaining part. So that's it from my end. Thank you for attending this session, this interaction. For any further guidance, you can always reach on to us on our social media handles. And if you are a student already associated with Career Revenues, you all know how to contact your teachers. You can text on the mobile application on the Career Revenues mobile app. Will help you out not only for the difficulties in the subject, in any generalized guidance also you require. Text us and we will help you out. This is the most crucial time, last 1 week. Don't get any state of panicness into your mind. Stay cool and all the best for your examination. Thank you and bye.
Good evening, everyone. I am Saurav Kumar from Career Avenues, Delhi. And now in this second session, we'll discuss about some other subjects of planning part. But those subjects, they are having both the portions in the common part, in the planning part. So we'll cover subjects like urban planning, urban housing, urban design, landscape, transportation, planning techniques, and management. In all the subjects in the starting, I'll tell you that what is their importance with respect to GATE exams, how many questions they ask for from each of the subject, then what type of questions they ask, and we'll cover all the important topics as well, like about the theory parts, about the numerical parts, both these things. So if we start this revision session, first we can start it with urban planning. And then in urban planning, if we look at the importance of it with respect to GATE exams, so I would say that urban planning is very important for GATE. The reason being, the weightage of it is actually around average 3 to 4 questions each year. Now these 3 to 4 questions, they are theoretical questions. In urban planning, you have just theoretical questions, no numerical question. And these are very typical questions, like they keep on repeating those questions as well. So the type of questions, and as per the new syllabus, urban planning is in the common part and in the planning part. So those of you who are planning to attempt the planning part out of architecture and planning, you need to study dedicatedly for urban planning. Still, majority of the portion that lies in the common part for it. In this one, if you look at the common part, there are principles of urban planning. There are works of planners. There are some small terms like acoustics, all these things. In the planning part, you have hierarchy of plans. You have other some terms like transit oriented development or special economic zone, special residential zone, all these things. So if we look at the first one about urban planning, in this one, there is a topic called as urban area. That is, they define urban area. So what is the criteria through which they define? You need to know that. Criteria like the population or the working population, what share of population should be engaged in what. Second is about the density. After this, there is classification of urban areas. So there are different, you can say, parameters on which they have classified the urban areas on the population, on the size of town. So for this, there are some tables which you should know. Like this first slide, it tells you about the parameters. GATE have previously asked questions on this detail, that what should be the minimum population of urban area, or about what percent of working population should be engaged in non-agricultural work, or what is the density of population. So these details you need to remember for sure. After this, we have this classification given in URDPFI for urban settlements, like what is a small town, what is a medium town, large city, all these things. These small towns, they are also referred as the transitional towns, as they are transitioning from the rural areas to urban areas and up to the megapolis. So for this, you should know what is the population range for each of the category, and then what is the governing local authority in that. Sometimes GATE ask about this population range and about the classification of different urban settlements. Now, based on this population range, they have one more, you can say, division in which the class 1 to 6, they are defined. And this is the population range. Now, in this, remember that this is up to 1 lakh, but the previous one, it is up to 1 crore. So do not mix these two things together. Then this table also given in URDPFI, it is very important because you have different planning systems in which you have core area of planning, these 4 types, and you have some specific plans. For all of these, you should definitely know the time frame, like perspective plan for 20 to 30 years, regional plan for 20 years, like that. GATE can directly ask you 1 mark question, or they can give you match the following kind of questions for this. So that's one thing. After this, in urban planning, also these tables, I put them in the slide so that if you want to study right from here, just after this session on the YouTube, you can pause it, you can note it down, you can study them from here only. After this, another important part in urban planning is various theorists and their work. So for those urban planning theorists, you need to definitely remember their theories, or you can say their principles, what their thoughts were. After this, you need to learn the terms which are coined by them. You should know the books written, and you should also know the example of cities. Like if there are any live examples of their work on the cities, then you should know that as well. So for each of the planning theorists, these details you need to remember. It's like, for example, if we look at the work of Sir Patrick Geddes. Now, in this, he is considered as the father of modern town planning. And the terms coined by him are conurbation, constellation theory, then diagnostic survey, and conservative surgery. So these are some of the terms coined by him. GATE usually asks that diagnostic survey, a term coined by which urban planner. So should know that it's by Sir Patrick Geddes. After this, the planning philosophies are place, work, and folk. This is also known as the Gedesian triad. After this, next one is the outlook tower. And third one is valley section principle. So these are some of the planning philosophies by him that you need to for sure remember. And we also have a city example, which is Tel Aviv in Israel. So this is the city whose core was planned based on the philosophies of Sir Patrick Geddes. So these are some of the details you can remember. Also, previously questions were directly asked from these. Then if you look at another example of, let's say we have Sir Ebenezer Howard. So for him, you can remember two things. First is Garden City, and second is the theory of three magnets. After that, you can also get into the details, like the theory of three magnets. Basically, there are those three magnets in which you have the town, you have the country, and you have town country. Or for the garden city, you should remember the details about the population, about the size that was given, like population should be 32,000, area should be 1,000 acres, and your agricultural belt around it should be of 5,000 acres. Now, based on this information, GATE just phrase it multiple times into different forms, and they ask questions. So this detail you can remember for Sir Ebenezer Howard. Also for Garden City, we have some examples, like you have Letchworth or you have Welwyn. So these are some live examples based on the concept of Garden City. After this, we can have Arturo Soria Mata for the linear city. And example, we have Madrid, or let's say we have FLW. And for him, you can remember Broadacre City, the Mile High Tower. So these I'm just telling you the crux of their work, their philosophies, and let's say the book also, The Disappearing City. In 1932. So these details we can remember for FLW. Then we have Le Corbusier, and his works include The Contemporary City, Vision Plan for Paris, Radiant City, and Linear Industrial Town. Now in this part, you need to try to understand that do not confuse between the work of any two planners. Not just in GATE, in other competitive exams also, they ask like Broadacre City is a concept be given by whom. So sometimes students get confused that it's by Le Corbusier. So try not to get confused like that. All these details we can remember for Le Corbusier. We also have Daniel Burnham. And you must be knowing it, the City Beautiful movement. Now this linear industrial town, we have an ideal industrial town as well. We have self-sufficient industrial town as well. So again, try not to get confused. Like we have, let's first write the name, Robert Owen. with self-sufficient industrial town. Or we have Paolo Soleri, and the concept is arcology. We have Arcosanti in Arizona. This is an experimental town based on his concepts of arcology. So remember both the things, the name and the example. Then we have Clarence Perry. The concept is neighborhood concept. So these are some of the theorists and their work which you can directly remember. If you observe the previous questions, they usually ask simple straightforward questions from these details. But if you look at the next concept, which is these urban land use models. Now, for these urban land use models, you need to remember a lot of things. Like you should know that the von Thunen model looks like this. It is also called as agricultural land use model. Now, along with these concentric rings, you should know, not just should, you definitely know that what all these uses are. It's like first is in the center, you have central city, then you have intensive farming, then you have forest. Because sometimes what GATE can do, they can number them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 like that. And then they can ask you about match the following or out of other options given. So this is how you need to remember both of these concentric zone model, both of these having concentric circles, but you should know their land use. It is called as Burgess model also. So if there are multiple names for anything, you need to remember all the details given by Ernest Burgess. So again, for this one, remember the details: CBD, transition zone, LIZ, middle income, then commuting zone. After that, we have these two land use models also. One is sector model or Hoyt model or wedge, which is this first one given by Homer Hoyt. All these details, they are similar to this one. He just said that the development will not occur in concentric circles, but it will develop in the sectors. After that, we have multiple nuclei model by Harris and Ullman. This is this one. Also remember the overall form of it. GATE can just give you the outline of this model and they can ask you to identify it, or it is given by whom. Such questions. After this, in urban planning, we can again remember, you can say, some more theories and the name of theories given by. It's like we have growth pole theory, which is given by Francois Perroux, or we have Weber's theory of location, given by Alfred Weber, or let's say central place theory, given by Walter Christaller, or if we note down some more names, you can say core periphery theory, which is given by John Friedman, or one concept which is of acoustics. Multiple times questions were asked in GATE, and it is given by C.A. Doxiadis. So these are again some more theories and the theorist. After this, in urban planning, there is one more topic which is different from all these work, and which is the Vedic planning. The Vedic principles of planning. Now, if you have gone through this topic while your preparation, so you know all these names: Dandaka, Sarvato, Bhadra, Swastika, Karumuka, all these. You need to know their names, you need to know their layouts. I'm just writing down some of the names. That is Dandaka, Sarvato Bhadra, Nandyavarta, Padmaka, Karumuka. So while going through these Vedic principles of planning, you should know that, okay, what is the layout? If you have such kind of semicircular layout, then which principle of planning is this one? So you should know those details. For all of these, what is, how Dandaka look like, how Sarvata Bhadra look like, all these things. There are more like Parastara, Chaturmukha. After this, when we are looking at the cities, then you need to also look at the example of Indian cities and also like the Egyptian cities, Greek cities. So some of the cities you can go through for GATE perspective are, let's say first we have the Egyptian cities. So for Egyptian, we have Kahun, we have Luxor, we have Thebes. Or for the Greek cities, we have Piraeus, Miletus, Rhodes. At least for sure, remember these names. After that, you can go through the layout of them and you can see that, okay, Hippodamus plan is there, some grid layout is there. So those details you can cover. Just go step by step. First, remember whatever is there in front of you, that these are Greek cities, these are Egyptian cities. After that, you can go through further details of them. Then we have Roman cities. Roman cities like Timgad or Pompeii. Now, previously question was asked that Timgad is a type of which city? Roman, Greek, Egyptian. So such simple questions you can also expect in exam. After that, if you look at Indian cities, so for that, go through Shahjahanabad and Lutyens Delhi. Then for planning perspective, we have Chandigarh, Jaipur. You can also go through Jamshedpur, Gandhinagar. These are some of the important Indian cities. Again, you need to go through their layout. You need to go through their planners. Then these are some of the planners and the cities which you can remember. Like Patrick Geddes, Tel Aviv. I gave you this example, so you can remember. Or Arturo Soria Mata, Madrid, like that. We have some more. So these things you can directly try to remember for exam. After that, in urban planning, there are some more small concepts. Like there is eco city or smart city, TOD, SEG, SIR. These are special economic zone, special residential zone, all these things, special investment region. Then in smart city, there is an ABD model. So for this ABD model, you can see that we have retrofitting, we have redevelopment, and we have greenfield development. And for all of these, area are defined. Like for retrofitting, there is 500 acres. For redevelopment, you have 50 acres. And for greenfield development, you have 250 acres. So directly remember these values. Again, previously question was asked on this about arranging them in the hierarchy of their area in some increasing or decreasing order. So you can remember these details. After that, you have transit oriented development. So just you should have an idea of transit oriented development, that you have some line of some transit line, let's say a metro line, and on that you are developing some high density area. Like this is a metro station, this is another metro station. We are just taking the example of metro, and you are developing such kind of zones in which there would be very high density, and there would be, now these center to center, this distance could be 1000 meters. This is the transit station, and in this area you will have mixed use, high density. So this, we just get an overview of transit oriented development, and that was about urban planning. We discussed about the importance of urban planning with respect to GATE exams, what kind of questions, how many questions we can expect, and we also get into the detail of that theory part. Now if we look at urban housing, again urban housing in GATE exam, it is important because you can have 2 to 3 questions, and these questions again both theoretical and numerical. Now in urban housing, numerical part is very important. It's like you can expect one numerical question each year for sure. And there are different types of numericals in urban housing, so we'll look at that also. We'll look at the concept of them, what all you need to remember. And as per the new syllabus, urban housing comes under both common and planning part. So this common part, it includes the concepts of housing, about the density calculation, whereas this planning part, it includes the schemes and programs of government. Then about not just about housing, but also about the slum development. Then standards about housing, that those things are also covered. So now if we get into the detail of urban housing, and first thing, if we start with the very basic one, which is the concepts like the carpet area, the built up area, super built up area. So carpet area is your area in which you can actually lay down your carpet. So you will not include the area which is covered by the walls. But also in this carpet area, you will not include certain parts, like you will not include stairs, you will not include shaft, you will not include bathroom, kitchen, balcony. These things are not included. After this, in net area, you can just say that it is the area where one can spread carpet. Then if you look at the built up area, so built up area will include all these areas. It will have the carpet area plus all these above areas, plus it will have the walls and any exclusive balcony if it is there. And then the third one we have is super built up area. So this is the built up area that we have covered above, plus proportionate share proportionate area of common facilities. So it's like if you have different flats arranged and some balcony, like all these, they are flats, you have some stairs, some lift area, and this is the common part in center. So it will be divided in between all the units proportionately. So these are different concepts in housing in the starting part. Next comes about density. So for density, you need to know two things. One is net density, second is gross density. Now, gross density is same as you will anyway consider a density would be like total number of dwelling units divided by your total land area. Now, in this land area, there will be the area which is covered by housing units. There will be area which is covered by community facilities, about by the roads, by let's say landscape area, anything. So entire land area is considered in the gross density. But if you take another one, which is net density, you can also understand that if you are thinking of something net, that means you are subtracting something. Just you can say one of the method of remembering things if you find it difficult. So in net density, again, you will take the total number of dwelling units, but you will divide it by net residential area, which means you will just consider that area which is covered by the residential units, by the dwelling units, which also means that you will take this total land area and you will subtract all the area which is under the community facilities or under the road or anything that we discussed previously. So these two things you need to remember for a density. They directly ask questions on it. After this, in housing, for the theory part, there is a concept that is role of government in housing delivery. And basically there are three different, you can say, time frame and the role of government that changes. First is phase one, which goes from 1950s to 1980s, and government was the provider, means the government was providing all the housing units. In the phase two, that goes from late 1980s to mid 2000, government was the enabler. It was enabling people to construct houses. Then comes phase three, which goes from mid 2000 to present. Now here government is facilitator. Government is just facilitating all the housing, and it is done by, let's say, private players, by PPP models, by anything. So remember the role of government, how it is changing with respect to time. Then in housing, if we look at one of the type of questions that that we need to understand, that is unit calculation. Unit calculation is, let's say we have capital N, which is total number of dwelling units, and there are, let's say, three different type of dwelling units: dwelling unit 1, 2, 3, or let's say for LIG, MIG, HIG, like that we can have division in this total number of dwelling units. So that is, let's say you have, or first let's write the types: type 1, type 2, type 3. Out of these total dwelling units, they have their share, like P1%, P2%, P3%. It's like, for example, I'm saying it is 30% type 1, 20% type 2, like that. And each unit of type 1 have an area A1, type 2 area A2, type 3 area A3. It's like it is 30 square meter area for one unit. Therefore, for the unit calculation, it will be N multiplied by P1 multiplied by A1. This part will give you the total area which is under type 1, plus N into P2 into A2. You are basically first finding the number of units under type 2, then you are multiplying them with the area of each unit, plus N into P3 into A3, and that will give you total built up area. So this is how you can find the total built up area. Now, this total built up area could be given to you using the site area, FAR, all these things. This division could be given to you, and they will ask you about the total number of dwelling units. So that you need to see what is given, what you need to find. Now, after this, we have some financing institutions. So these financing institutions you need to know, like we have NHB, National Housing Board. We have NABARD. These are development financial institutions. Then we have HDFC, we have HUDCO, we have some banks, scheduled commercial banks, we have cooperative banks, we have housing schemes. So these are different type of financing institutions. Like previously, when we saw that government is now just enabler, so finance is was made available to people to build their house. So these are the financing institutions who are working in the housing sector. After that, in urban housing, there are different policies or schemes, which are basically the guiding principles. And you need to remember the names in which year they came. It's like you have NHP, National Housing Policy, of 1988, or NHHP, National Housing and Habitat Policy of 1998. Or you have NUHHP, which is National Urban Housing and Habitat Policy of 2007. And last one you have is National Mission on Sustainable Habitat. So these, remember the name, the full form, and the year. After this, we can again look at one more type of numerical in urban housing, which is related to housing demand, housing shortage. This concept is having both theory and numerical part. So basically, let's say in this area you have 10,000 families, and they are having only 8,000 dwelling units. Out of these 8,000 dwelling units, 1,000 are dilapidated. That means you need to replace these 1,000. So effective dwelling units you are having are just 7,000. So your shortage will be 10,000 minus 7,000, which will be 3,000. But the formula for shortage will be the part that I just explained. We just need to write that in terms of a formula, which you can directly use in the questions. And that would be number of households minus your existing dwelling units minus dilapidated dwelling units. So first we took the existing dwelling units and subtracted the dilapidated dwelling units, and then this overall part was subtracted from the number of households, which are 10,000. So you will get housing shortage from here. Now in housing shortage, there are certain components of it, like you have obsolescence factor, which is your non-serviceable kacha houses or old structurally weak kacha houses, all these things like 80-year-old. Or you have congestion factor. Now congestion factor is socially unacceptable. It's like any household in which a married couple need to share a room with someone who is more than 12 years old. So that will add into congestion factor. In 2020, from this theory part, GATE made numerical. But if the concept is clear to you, numerical is very easy. So these are the components of housing shortage. Then another concept we have is of housing demand. Now, housing demand actually considers those people who cannot raise a demand, who cannot afford to get a house, who cannot pay for it, like the BPL families. So therefore, housing demand will be your housing shortage. First, you calculate housing shortage like from the formula we have seen previously. Then you subtract the households who cannot pay. GATE will give you this information who cannot pay, or they will tell you that these many families are BPL families or anything. So this is how you can find the housing demand. This is another type of numerical you can get in housing. After this, in urban housing, we have one more part, which is various schemes and programs, and they are very important. For these schemes and programs, you need to remember certain details, like remember their year, remember their objective, remember their full form, remember their target year, remember their target group. So for all the different schemes and programs, you need to remember all these details. It's like if I tell you by example, let's say we have RAY, which is Rajiv Awas Yojana. Now, Rajiv Awas Yojana aims at slum-free India. Its tenure was 2013 to 2022, and it was clubbed with PMAY. So this also you can consider, like previously some scheme, some program that was going on, and now government announces something new and they club the previous one, which was like having same objectives, and they can enhance certain things in the new scheme. Or let's say we have Pura. which stands for providing urban amenities in rural areas. So this is basically for rural development. It is of 2004. Or let's say we have PMGSY. Now previously one question was given in which GATE just gave you these short forms and they asked about these schemes are associated with what. So first thing, the full form should be clear to you. It's like PMGSY is Pradhan Mantri Gram Sadak Yojana. It started in 2000 to provide good all-weather road connectivity to all the cities, not just providing new road, but also improvement of existing road, and it's still going on. Then we have Hriday. So it stands for Heritage City Development and Augmentation Yojana. Now its full form is slightly different from others. That's why even this was previously asked in GATE about the full form of Hriday. So direct, straightforward 1-mark question you can expect from such easy things. Or let's say, if we look at some other examples, like we have PMAY, which is Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana, and its mission is housing for all. The time frame is 2015 to 2022. So the target year is very important. Or let's say we have Amrut, which stands for Atal Mission for Rejuvenation and Urban Transformation. Again, the year is 2015. Now, these were different schemes for, say, for urban transformation, for providing housing, or for the development of rural areas, or for providing road connectivity. We have certain schemes for the slum area as well. That is the slum upgradation schemes. And some of the examples are IHSDP of 2005. Now this stands for Integrated Housing and Slum Development Program. Or let's say another one is BSUP of again 2005-6, and it stands for Basic Services to Urban Poor. Then there were some other schemes like 2 million housing. $2 million housing program. If you cannot get into the details of these schemes, like first try to remember the name, the full form, and some overview for each scheme. Still, if you feel like it's getting a lot and in this last moment, at least remember that which all schemes are related with what. Then let's say you have Valmiki Ambedkar Malin Basti Awas Yojana of 2001. Then you have SJSRY Swan Jayanti Shahri Rozgar Yojana. So these were some of the slum upgradation schemes. In urban housing, there is one more concept which you need to remember, need to get through, and that is 5-year plans. Basically 5-year plans which planning commission used to make. Now they are under Niti Aayog. And for 5-year plans, you should know that the first 5-year plan, which was from 1951 to 56, what all was done under this? It's like TCPO was set up, Town and Country Planning Organization. This was set up. Or let's say some other example. Let's consider 8th 5-year plan. So for this, you should know that 8th 5-year plan was from 1992 to 97. In this time, you have 73rd and 74th amendment. 73rd and 74th constitutional amendment of 1992. So they were under the 8th 5-year plan. Or you can also remember the latest ones, like let's say the 12th 5-year plan, which is from 2012 to 2017. And you have Hriday, you have Amrut, these things which we already covered above. So it's also like, if you just remember the year of these, you can remember that they will fall under this category, and you can relate them with the which 5-year plan they belongs to. You can get a match the following kind of question with the 5-year plans and the details. So this way you need to remember them all up to the 12th 5-year plan. Just keep an idea of such things, major one. After this, in urban housing, there are also some small standards which they always keep on repeating, like let's say the size of a habitable room. So for this, you should know it is 9.5 square meters with a minimum width of 2.4 meters. Now this question was also asked previously in GATE about the size of a habitable room. Along with this, you can remember the height of all rooms which are there for human habitation. That should be greater than 2.75 meter. Similarly, you can have standards for other things, like let's say for staircase. You can directly refer NBC, you will get a table there. So it's like for staircase, there are different categories of residential area. So if there is just a residential area in which 1 or 2 families are there, so for that the width will be just 1 meter. But if there are multiple apartments, it will increase. So this is how you need to remember. Also, it's like if you look at the standard of a kitchen. So again, the height will go same as 2.75 meters, as we have seen here. Other details, like if you have kitchen with dining, so area should not be less than 7.5 square meters with a minimum width of 2.1 meters. And if there is just kitchen, then it will be 5 square meters and a width of 1.8 meters. So you can see that for dining part, this additional area was required of 2.5 square meters. Just like kitchen, you can also think of bathrooms. So go through the standards of that. What is the standard for just a bathroom? What is the standard for a WC? What is the standard if both are combined together? Then also remember about the fire tender. These are some general things which GATE keep on repeating. They keep on asking questions on this. Like for fire tender movement, the width of the driveway is 6 meters. The turning width, the radius there is 9 meter, like that. So with this, we are done with housing. We saw all the different type of questions they can ask. We understood the concept of them. We look at the formula. We also gone through the theory part. Now, if you look at the urban design, so for urban design, it is also important because you can get 2 to 3 questions on an average. So it's like 3 to 4 marks. Now, in these questions, you have majorly theoretical questions. Rare numerical, which also depends upon the degree of enclosure. And it is in the common part of the new syllabus. So we'll cover all those things which are important for GATE perspective in urban design, one by one. It's like if we start with urban design, there are a lot of terms which you need to understand. Because previously questions were asked like on the left side, they give you these terms, on the right side, they give you a description, and then you need to match them. So the terms could be like what is a grain, what is a tissue, what is urban morphology, what is a superfigure, what is an urban texture, what is sky view factor. I am telling you those terms which are very important for urban design, and GATE have considered them in asking questions. So after this session, just try to look through these terms. Explaining all of these in this session in this short time would be very difficult. So I'm just mentioning them here for you. Just go through these terms once, have an idea about with what thing they are related. Sky view factor, then you have biotope area factor, then we have WUNERF, we have frontal area density, we have drift index, etc. So these are some of the terms you should go through for urban design. Also, if you have solved previous year questions, you might have seen some of these terms already. There are also like street furniture, street hardware. Look at them. After this, if you look at the most important topic in urban design, that is degree of enclosure. Now, in degree of enclosure, basically, let's say this is the person standing here and he is looking at this. So you will consider the height h, you will consider the distance of this person d, and you will find the degree of enclosure based on this ratio h is to d. For that, you need to remember a table, that is, if you have full enclosure, so you will have h by d ratio of 1:1 or a theta of 45 degrees. If you have threshold of enclosure, or let's say optimal enclosure, so for that, this ratio will be 1:2 and the angle will be 26.57 degrees. Then you have minimum enclosure. For that, the ratio is 1:3 and the angle is 18.43 degrees. And the last one is loss of enclosure. which is ratio 1:4, and the angle is 14.04 degrees. Now, all these things on this slide, they are very, very important for GATE. The reason being, sometimes GATE give you questions like match them with their ratio. Sometimes they give numerical like the person standing in some area is experiencing threshold of enclosure and the height of the building is given. So tell us at what distance they are standing from the building. So first thing you should definitely know is this ratio, that it is 1:2. Now just try to remember this part, these two columns, because if you know how to use tan inverse in that calculator, you can simply find tan inverse 1/3. You will get this value. So no need to remember the values of theta. You can directly find that in exam. But remember this table. We can just write, very important. Now, along with this table, there are other things like you will have a detailed vision for 45-degree angle. You will have the vision of whole object for 30-degree angle. And you will have vision of object plus its context, and that will be of 18-degree angle. So sometimes GATE gives you these details as well, that there is a vision of whole object or the context is also visible. So you should know the angle. Now, after this in GATE, there could be like some famous squares, plazas, piazza, anything you can say. So those you need to remember, like for example, we have Trafalgar Square, or we have St. Peter's Square, or we have Piazza del Campo in Tuscany, Italy. So for all of these examples, you should know that how they look. And if they are famous for something. Like the Piazza del Campo is known for its human scale. So those details you need to remember. After this comes another important part of urban design, that is the theorists, their work, their principles, books written by them, the terms coined by them. And there are a lot of urban design theorists that we usually cover when we prepare in detail for GATE in our regular classes. But also out of all these, there are some of them which are, you can say, kind of favorite to GATE. And those are like, first one we can look at Kevin Lynch with the concept of wayfinding. Now for Kevin Lynch, you can remember some books like The Image of the City, What Time is This Place? Then there are some terms coined by him like legibility, imageability, After this, we have some elements of legibility, which are also very important for GATE. And those elements are path, node, landmark, edge, and district. So all these elements, you need to for sure remember the name of these, and also an overview of what these are. Like path is just a way or something. Node is, you can say, some area where some activity can take place. Landmark could be some landmark building in all other smaller buildings. Edge is like, you can say, you are having, let's say, C on this part, and you are having all the skyscrapers, urban area on this part. So this is the edge. And for the district, you are having some area in two-dimensional extent, which is having some kind of functional homogeneity. A person can mentally enter inside of, and activities can take place there. So that is a district. Some residential area, some college campus, some military area, anything. That is a district. So these things you can remember for Kevin Lynch. Another important one is Thomas Gordon Cullen. And the books are Townscape, The Concise Townscape, Gordon Cullen, Vision of Urban Design, all these. And the terms which are coined by him, some of them are serial vision, then punctuation, closure. Previously question was asked like punctuation and closure, these terms are coined by whom? So even if you are very attentive to this revision session, in which you might feel like we are going up at a bit faster pace, but still if you are attentive in this one, then these things, they will help you. As Raja sir previously mentioned that yes, in GATE questions get repeated. So just try to understand these things. After this, some other names which you can remember are like, we have Edward Hall for theory of proxemics. We have Oscar Newman for theory of defensible space. We have Christopher Alexander who is all for the pattern movement, and you can also write it as he is the father of pattern language movement. A question was asked previously on his name, asking who is the father of pattern language movement. Then along with urban design, we also cover conservation. So in that part, for conservation, you need to remember the names of various treaties, charters, conventions, and you need to have an idea of like in which area they are concerned with, like someone with cultural heritage, someone with historic gardens, someone with historic towns and cities, all these things. So in this we have ICOMOS, which stands for International Council on Monuments and Sites. We have ICCROM, which is the International Center for the Study of Preservation and Restoration of Cultural Property. So if you just remember the full form of these abbreviations of their name, you will also understand that, okay, ICOMOS is something related to monuments and sites. ICCROM is something for cultural property. Similarly, like we have the Florence Charter. So you can remember that Florence, flora, flowers, anything, and they are related with historic gardens. Or let's say we have Washington Charter. So that is related with conservation of historic towns and urban areas. We also have NARA document, which talks about value authenticity. So previously a question was asked in GATE in which they gave match the following. On the left side, you have the names like Florence Charter, Washington Charter. On the right side, you have all these options. So if you just remember this detail, your chances of scoring better marks in GATE that increases. If you feel like we are going a bit faster pace, you can again revise these things. You can just pause on the slides, have a look at it. These things are simple. You can just go through them and you will retain them in memory. After this, we have AMASAR of 2010, which stands for Ancient Monuments and Archaeological Sites and Remains Act. Now, this is very important. And this act, it gives us three different type of areas. Like you have protected area, which you are protecting. Let's say this is your protected area. After this comes the prohibited area. Prohibited area is basically, let's say you take an offset of it for 100 meters. So this is prohibited area. Any construction is prohibited in this part. After that comes regulated area. So regulated area goes further beyond on all the directions. I am not just making on these sides. It is 200 meters. So remember that these distances, they are not from the center of it. They are from the this protected area limits, the site of it. You are just taking the offset of it for 100 meters like that. So this is for MSR. Then also GATE usually ask a question. It started asking from last 3-4 years, and that is related to UNESCO World Heritage Sites. World heritage sites. So there are three categories. One is natural, second one is cultural, and third one is mixed, a mix of all these. So what GATE to do, like in 2020 they asked about which sites are added in 2019. In 2019 they asked about 2018. So for this, at least we can remember two sites, which is Ramappa temple or Kakatiya Rudreshwara temple. One site is this one. Second site is Dholavira, Harappan city in Gujarat. So these two are added this year. So remember these names. Along with this, in conservation part, there is something like some terms like preservation, restoration, reconstitution. So you can just go through these terms as well. Preservation is just preserving it in whatever condition it is, like that. So with this, we are done with urban design, urban conservation, all these also. Again, we discussed all the details. We get into a lot of detail for theory part as well. Next we have is landscape design. Now in landscape design, it is also a theory subject, but there are numericals as well, like based on the runoff calculation. So in landscape design, again, you can expect like 1 to 2 questions. Sometimes 2 to 3 questions are also asked. And these questions are again both theory and numerical. This comes in the common part of the new GATE syllabus. In this theory and numerical part, numerical is two things: runoff and the contours related to contour interval calculation. This theory part, it includes trees, with their common name, with their scientific name, with their other details. It includes different landscape styles like the Egyptian garden, Chinese garden, all these things. And it includes some small terms. So this is the theory part. These two are just the numerical part. Also in this, runoff is like the most important. If GATE have to ask just one question, it is highly likely that they will ask from runoff calculation. So in this one, if we get into the details, some terms which you need to remember are, like we have planting and caring techniques, which includes like pruning, hoeing, mulching, felling, all these. Or there are irrigation methods. Pruning is like just the trimming of trees. Hoeing is just like plowing the topsoil so that there could be aeration, better absorption, removal of weeds. Mulching is like covering the top part with mulch with some material. Irrigation methods like drip irrigation, sprinkler irrigation, flood irrigation. Then small terms like xeriscaping. Xeriscaping, in which you are focusing upon no irrigation or very minimal irrigation. So you are employing such methods. Then there could be different tree sections, like different components in a tree section. What is sapwood, what is hardwood, then cracks, Also in landscape, we have certain terms like transpiration, which is the movement of water from the roots to the from entire body. It goes to leaves and then it leaves the tree from the leaf. Then we have phototropism, in which the plant they bend towards light. We have photoperiodism, in which they depend upon the duration of light they are getting. So these are very easy small terms which you can go through. After that, in landscape comes the scientific name of trees. Now this part is very important. The details you need to remember is, first thing, the scientific name. Second thing is their common name. Third, you should know the shape of leaves, their bloom color, like the color of their flowers. These are like the specific characteristics of these trees. GATE directly ask questions like Plumeria alba is what? GATE can ask you like that. For theory part, I'm just telling you about what all is very important for any subject, what all you can look through in this last moment. For the numerical part, I'm explaining you the entire concept so that you can solve the questions. It's like in landscape, if you look at the concept of runoff. So runoff is basically you have some area and on that you are having rainfall. So we are concerned with what is the water we are getting here in terms of runoff. We are concerned with the quantity of it. And for this, for the calculation of this quantity Q, the formula we have is Q is equal to CIA. It's that simple. This Q is the quantity. C is the coefficient, surface coefficient, runoff coefficient, anything. I is the intensity of rainfall. And A is the area, which is contributing to the overall. Now in this thing, you need to remember the units while putting in the formula. Like intensity of rainfall is usually given as mm per hour. So you need to convert that into meters. Area is usually given in hectares. You need to convert them into meter square. Coefficient is unitless. After that, this quantity you will get in something like, let's say, meter cube per hour. So now you need to look at the question whether they are asking in meter cube or they are asking in liter. So then you need to convert it. So take care of units. They are very important for runoff calculation. In this thing, if there is only one surface, so that would be having the direct coefficient. If there are multiple type of surfaces, like let's say these 4 type of surfaces which their own coefficient and area, in that case you first need to find a composite runoff coefficient, which is C1A1 plus C2A2 plus C3A3 plus C4A4 divided by the total area. So from this part, we will find the composite runoff. And then we can directly use this composite runoff, let's say C dash. We can directly put it in the formula of Q would be equal to C dash IA. Now this is the same formula which we have covered here. It's just that sometimes there could be multiple surfaces. So first you need to find the coefficient, then you have to find the quantity. After this, in landscape, we have landscape styles. Landscape styles are basically different styles, different gardens: Egyptian gardens, Japanese gardens, Chinese gardens, French, Mughal, Persian, Spanish, all these. So they have some unique characteristic which you need to remember. You need to look at the elements of each garden. If there is some ideology which they follow, you need to look for that. Ideology is, or it's like if they are highlighting on the main building or if the building is subdued. Then look at what is, when we discussed about the unique characteristic, it's like the Japanese garden have the concept of dry garden. Now this is favorite. They have multiple times asked about dry garden is associated with what. So it's with the Japanese garden. Or let's say with Egyptian, there is a type of funeral garden. So this is unique to Egyptian. Or let's say when we were talking about these elements. So in Chinese gardens, we have some zigzag bridge shape like this. So this is how you can remember these elements in detail. This was about all the landscape part, about the trees, about the numerical, and about the landscape styles. If we look at the contours, so for contours, you should know that what is a contour interval. Basically, the difference between the elevation difference between two consecutive contour lines. You should know what is an index contour, which is the fifth contour line, which they make bold in a contour map. Then also need to look at the properties of contours, that contour lines, they never intersect each other. They will tell you about the landform, about the slope, steep slope, gentle slope, all these details. Then you need to know the landforms, different type of landforms like a hill, a ridge, a valley, a spur, a saddle, a depression, anything. Now previously a question was asked in which they asked us to find the ridges and the valley. So that part, what you can do to identify a ridge in a contour map, look at the U or V shaped lines, contour lines, and they will be having their closed end. Closed end is basically this part, pointing towards a lower elevation. So that will be a ridge. And if you just take opposite of it, that this close end will point towards higher elevation, then it will become a valley. So this question was asked previously. You can just remember this information and you can expect marks from this concept. This was for the theory part of contours. For the numerical part, we need to understand 2-3 things. Like let's say this point is at plus X elevation. This point is some plus Y elevation. So this total distance is the rise, which is equal to Y minus X. This distance is called as run. So we all know that tan theta is equal to slope is equal to perpendicular upon base, implies slope will be equal to rise by run. Directly remember this. First thing. Second thing is about the contour interval. And this will be given by rise divided by number of contours minus 1. This minus 1 is in the denominator. It's like if you have, let's say, 6 contour lines, and this is 700, this is 800. So your contour interval will be equal to the rise, which is here 100, this minus this, divided by the contour lines are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 6 minus 1. So it will be 100 divided by 5. 20 will be the contour interval. Direct, straightforward. Sometimes there could be question like slope is given, run is given. So first you will find the rise. Then you can use that rise here to find the contour interval. So they can mix both of these formula also together to solve it to get the answer. And last thing, which is very basic, which you all are already aware of, and that is related to the scale, which is nothing but distance or the length on map divided by actual distance, like what we always do in any of the map, in anything. Excuse me. So you can use three things, these three things, and you can solve any of the question related to contours. And with this, we are done with landscape design. You can watch this video in 0.75 speed. Next we have is planning technique and management. Now this is a big subject. There are a lot of topics in it. And in PTM, 3 to 4 questions are usually asked. This year they asked like 6 questions. They are both theoretical and numerical. Sorry. And it is in the planning part. Planning part of new syllabus. So the different topics that we have is, first is land use codes. Land use codes, basically you have seen them. They are like, you have residential, you have yellow, you have commercial, that is red. So this way you need to remember these color codes. Directly GATE will ask you a question, a 1-mark question they can ask about these color codes. There is a straightforward table given in NBC. You can just search the land use color codes and you will find all these values. There are 10 different land uses. You need to remember the name and the color for them. And it is something very basic which you should definitely know. So this way, go for them. Industrial, public, semi-public, recreational, all these. Next, there is a concept of data collection techniques. Data collection technique, like the primary data collection, secondary data collection, all these things. In this one topic is very important, and that is inspection survey. This inspection survey actually falls under the primary category. And for inspection survey, you need to remember these proxy indicators. It's like GATE might give you this name, this name, this name, and this name. And they will ask you which one is a proxy indicator for economic growth. So you should know that only these two. This is how questions could be there. Just remember this table. And they're also very easy to remember. It's like if there are a lot of private water carriers, it means the water supply service is not that good. So it will tell you about the service level. So you can, no need to just try to memorize everything. You can go through by understanding them. After that, we have a concept of aerial photography. Now in aerial photography, numericals are asked from this. You need to understand the layout. It's like this is sea level. This is a terrain which is at a height of mean sea level, small h. You have your aerial vehicle which is flying over here with some height of capital H. So this overall height from the terrain, it's like this vehicle is observing this terrain. This comes out to be capital H minus small h, right? This capital H minus this small h. This lens will be having some focal length f. So because of this, the scale S will be equal to f divided by h minus h, where this f is this focal length, capital H is capital H from mean sea level. This h is the elevation of this terrain from the ground. So directly remember this formula, it will be easier for you. GATE will tell you about all these heights. You need to identify them. You need to put the values and you will get the answer. Then this table is in URDPFI, some satellites. So you need to remember for each satellite, what is their spatial resolution, spectral resolution, at least these two columns for sure. This Cartosat, it was launched in November 2019. Now, after this comes population projection methods. In that, just remember the formula directly, that if you have arithmetic increase, the formula is PT, your target population will be P naught plus KT, where that K is the constant increase you are having. Then in the geometric one, you have PT equals to P naught bracket 1 plus K by 100 to the power T. So this K is that constant rate with which the population is increasing. This P naught is the base population from which you are calculating. T is the time period from this P naught to PT. Directly put the values and get the answer. Third we have is exponential. So for exponential, the formula is P is equals to P naught multiplied by e to the power RT. Now for this formula, you need to remember the value of E, which is 2.718, because this you need to put. T is again same time period. PT is the target. P naught is the starting population. This E is Euler number. So these three methods, GATE usually asks questions only up to these three methods. So remember their formula directly. I have also explained the components of each formula, so you can put the values. Then comes the population pyramids. So for this, if you get a shape which is something like this, so you will say that it is having a rapid growth. if you get a shape which is something like this, so it is having a slow growth. Previously GATE have given you these outlines and they asked about which one is showing which growth. If you are having it as a straight one, so because this is straight, it is showing zero growth. And then if you are having it something like this, so because of this lack here, it is having negative growth. And after this, if you have something like you are going regular, but there is a bulge in here. So this bulge will tell you that there is a lot of in-migration. If it is on the left side. So you can directly remember these details, the shape and what type of growth is there. 2-mark question was asked previously. After this, in PTM, there is also a law, which is RFCT LARR Act of 2013. Now, this stands for the right to fair compensation and transparency in land acquisition, rehabilitation, and resettlement. And in this, there is something called as consent clause. So this consent clause says that first thing is you need to take consent of 80% families if the acquisition of land is for private companies. You will take a consent of 70% families if the acquisition is for public-private partnership. And third is no consent required if the land is acquired for declared public purpose. By the government. So you can remember it directly that private company maximum. If it is public private, it is lesser than that. And if it is required for some declared public purpose, let's say for some defense reason, so no consent is required. After this, just get an idea of some land assembly techniques, which is land acquisition, land pooling. These we are studying land assembly techniques. Land reservation or accommodation reservation, then TDR, transferable development right, then guided land development, and we have inclusive land development. Now, if you just if you remember these names, previously a question was asked in which GATE just gave 4 options and they asked which one is not an assembly technique. So it doesn't matter if you have gone into the detail of these. At that moment, if you just if you are aware of these names, then you can directly get the marks. This is the benefit of having this last minute revision session. that some of these things can stay in your mind, and you can score marks in exam. This is how you can get benefited from this session. Just go through it once again tomorrow or day after tomorrow and try to go through these details. Another detail you need to remember is that we have 73rd and 74th amendment. Year was 1992. 73rd was for rural local bodies or Panchayati Raj institutions, PRIs. 74th is for urban local bodies. Multiple times questions were asked just on this basic information. Now in this one, like in 73rd at Gram Sabha, it will be at a village level, Gram Sabha, or you can say a Gram Panchayat. Then you will be having a block samiti or a Panchayat samiti at a block level. And then you have a Jila Parishad at a district level. Same like we are having this hierarchy for the rural area, we have for urban as well. Like we have the Nagar Panchayat, then we have municipal council, and then we have municipal corporation. So this we have covered about all the necessities for 73rd, 74th constitutional amendment. We have such kind of space standards as well. So go through them. At least this table is very important. You should know for all the land use categories, what is the value for each type of urban area and whether they are decreasing or they are increasing. So this way, at least remember this table. 2-3 times questions were asked for 2 marks just from this table. And towards the end of PTM, we have a bid rent curve, which is basically with the distance from the center, how the bid rent changes, how much rent you are willing to pay, that changes. And you need to remember this, that the first one is for retail, second is for manufacturing, and third is for residential. Once GATE asked question like, here they have written A, B, C, and then they ask like which one is what. So you should know first retail, because they can afford the maximum rent. They can be near the CBD. Like that. And we have some PPP models, like we have BOT, or we have BTO, we have BOOT. So basically, if you remember the full form of them, it will be very easy for you. Like this is build, operate, transfer. So you will build it, you will operate it, and in the end, you will transfer it to the government, like that. Or BTO, which is build, transfer, operate. So this way, just go through these PPP models and try to understand what's happening just from the full form of it, like I explained in the first case. GATE can give you the description of that, and then they can ask about the which model it is. And with this, we are done with PTM also. Last part of today's session is related to transportation planning and traffic engineering. And in this one, from transportation, sometimes they ask just 1-2 questions, sometimes they ask like 3-4 questions also. Let's just consider that 2-3 questions are on an average. Again, we have both theory and we have numerical questions. It comes under the common part and planning part. So common part will include actually all the design of roads, parking areas, pedestrian, slow moving traffic, all these things. Planning area will include your traffic engineering part. All the traffic flow analysis about the shock waves, all these things. So in transportation, first thing is about our typical cross section of highway. So this is, I have put an image here. You can pause it here and you can, like after the session, look at all these things, that in the center you have carriageway or pavement, then you have shoulder, then you have the side slope, berm, side drain, then you have road boundary, building line, control line, all these things. So go through this section, remember all the things. Then you need to remember these standard values, all of these given by IRC, Indian Road Congress. So you need to remember the details, like a single lane having a width of 3.75, 2 lane without curb 7, but when you added curb, it became 7.5. Like that, you need to remember. Then these are for the roadway width. So if you first learn this table, you will know that roadway width is this part having the carriageway and the shoulder. So this table, it tells you about the road classification for different type of road and also the different terrain we are having: plain, rolling, mountainous, steep. Then value suggested by IRC for different surface types and heavy rain. This is basically standard for camber. Camber is, you might have seen in that image that the road was not straight like this. It was something like this. So your vehicle will move over them like this. So when we are doing it, this is for the drainage. How much we need to do, that depends upon the surface type and the condition of rain. So that is camber. These are important standards. You need to remember them. Then we have something like design speed. Design speed is the most important factor for designing the road. And maximum speed you can have is in the plain terrain for national highway. Then for major district road, for other district road, it will keep on decreasing. In these hilly areas, it will further decrease. This is how you can remember the table. Then we have a concept of gradient. Now, gradient is basically 4 types: ruling gradient, limiting gradient, exceptional gradient, and minimum gradient. Gradient is basically this part you can see here, how much rise and fall you are having. Ruling is what with what you will try to design the road. Limiting you will do, you will provide because ruling is causing a lot of cost overrun. Exceptional you will provide in the exceptional condition where limiting can't help. Minimum you will provide for the side drainage, minimum gradient that should be there so that water can drain out in the side drains. So that is gradient. And for that we have a concept of grade compensation. This grade compensation basically, the gradient we have seen. So sometimes when you have conditions like this, so in such conditions the vehicle cannot make this round turn, they cannot compensate, they cannot tackle the gradient, so you need to decrease the gradient. For this you need to remember three steps. First step is that whether the grade is flatter than 4% or not. So if the gradient given is 3%, you will not provide any compensation. If it is 5, you will provide. Second, the value will be 30 plus R by R%. This is how much you need to provide. So this is how you will calculate the grade compensation. And third thing is you cannot provide the value you are directly getting here. So you need to look at the maximum, which you will get by 75 by R%. These three steps you will do one by one. You will get the final grade compensation which you can provide. Then we have a concept of site distance. And in this site distance, we have SSD, we have ISD, OSD, and HSD. If we get disconnected here because of some issue, then we are almost towards the end of this session. No need to worry about that. We'll join again, but still if you want to, we are almost done with the session. If in case we got disconnected here. This is stopping side distance. This is intermediate side distance, overtaking side distance, and headlight side distance. So you need to directly remember formula for them. It's like SSD is VT plus V square divided by 2G F plus minus 0.01 N. Remember, V will always be in meter per second. G is your gravity, which is acceleration due to gravity, 9.8. F is the friction coefficient, it will be given to you. N will be of the gradient of road. Now, if you calculate SSD, ISD will be equal to, you can say twice of SSD, or you can say that for two vehicles, you will find SSD separately. SSD1 plus SSD2, and you will add that. Another thing, if you calculate SSD, then HSD is same as SSD. Headlight side distance is same as stopping side distance. So just remember this one formula. You can find three things. Three things out of these four. Then there is just one thing, which is overtaking side distance. It will be VB into T plus 2S plus VB root 4S by A plus V into capital T. T is the total time taken, and T is also equal to root 4S by A, which is basically this part. Always put it into meter per second. It will be given in kilometer per hour. This will be 2.5 seconds. This S will be 0.7 VB plus 6. So this is how you can find stopping distances, overtaking side distances. Then we have traffic intersection. First we have is at grade. At grade is basically which you usually experience. Here you are having the red lights. And we have grade separated. Grade separated are basically you are providing a flyover over a road. So in the at grade, you have different types like this T or cross or Y junction or scissors or some skewed Y or some staggered T. All these are at grade. Also in this at grade, there are a lot of conflicts like the traffic, they will intersect with each other, their path will cross. So when you have T and we are looking at the conflicts, we are having the crossing, we are having the converging and diverging. So in case of T, you have 3 crossing, 3 converging, 3 diverging. In case of a 4-legged, which is something like this, you can say that you are having 2T, so you have 6, 6, 6. In case of having 4-legged like this, you have 16 crossing, 8 converging, 8 diverging. 3-4 questions are previously asked from this concept. Directly remember the values. It will help you in getting marks. Grade separated will be basically like you are having an underpass or an overpass, a flyover, a trumpet interchange at T junction, a clover leaf, something like this, a partial clover leaf in which there will be just 2. Then there is a concept of super elevation. Again, you are having such round profile and you need to make your road like this. So how much you have to do? The formula will be E plus F is equals to V square by GR. Super elevation is E. F is your lateral frictional factor. V is again in meter per second, the velocity. G is 9.8. R is the radius of this particular section. After this, we have travel demand modeling. And you need to remember the forecasting models for this 4-stage model. That is, we have trip generation, trip distribution, mode choice, and trip assignment. For all of these, the forecasting model is, for the first one, we have regression model. For trip distribution, we have gravity model. For mode choice, we have multinomial logit model. And for trip assignment, we have minimum tree search. So directly remember these 4-stage models. These are the forecasting models. After this, in traffic engineering, there are some terms for which you can directly remember their units. So that will help you in understanding or directly answering. Like also Raja sir mentioned that one question is always there for a unit. So previously a question was also there from this part, that you have a traffic volume or traffic flow. So the unit is vehicles, number of vehicles per unit time, like vehicles per hour, let's say. Or you have traffic density, which is vehicle per kilometer. Or you have parking load, which is vehicle hours. See, this is in multiplication. All of these, they are in division. So remember this difference. Then there is a small concept of shock wave. So for that, you can remember, you need to find the velocity of shock wave, which will be equal to the flow before and after divided by the density. This is the velocity of shock wave. This is the flow prior to change. This is the flow after change. This is traffic density, again prior, and this is traffic density after. So these conditions will be given to you in question. What is the flow prior to change, after the change? You need to understand the question, directly put the values in this formula. You will get the answer for a shock wave. In 2019, they asked a 2-mark question from shock wave. Then there is a concept of parking, on-street parking, off-street parking. So we need to consider on-street parking. For a car, we will consider 5 multiplied by 2.5 meters. And for a truck, it is 3.75 multiplied by 7.5 meters. Both of these are in meters. So therefore, question will directly tell you that whether it is a 30-degree parking, it is a 45-degree parking. Directly put the formula, it will be very easy for you instead of going for derivation. So these are the formula, just directly remember them. Either they will ask you about the length, or they will provide you that in this length, how many vehicles you can park. So put the values, you will directly get the answer. Now this one slide we can leave. This part I kept for the parking. Next, we have concept of ECS, equivalent car space. So that is first this table, car is one. So related to that, two-wheeler is 0.25, auto rickshaw 0.50. You need to remember this table. They can give you some combination of these vehicle types, and they will ask you about the total equivalent ECS for them. Or you might need to use this ECS to find the total parking area. Like, first table tells you about what is the permissible ECS per 100 square meter of floor area. So first you will have the floor area. For per 100 square meter, you need to provide 2 ECS in case of residential. After that, if they say that the type of parking is in open area, your area per ECS will be 23. If it is in basement, now because you need to construct a ramp and the retaining walls, all these things, the area will increase to 32. So this table you need to directly remember. GATE will not give you these values. So with that, we are done with the revision part. Actually, we get into a lot of detail, and that's why we went far beyond the time that we planned in the starting. But that's okay. Thank you, all of you. I would suggest you to again go through this revision part. I have planned out a lot of things which are actually very important for GATE, and they will definitely help you. Now, before ending, remember in the starting part, Raja sir shared an image related to the referral program. So that is also actually very helpful. You can refer to any friend to join this. You will get a benefit of 1500. Your friend will get a benefit of cashback of rupees 1500. For applying that, while applying for the coaching, in the form, there will be a column in which you can fill in all the details about the referral. That is related to the part already shared with you. Another thing is, if you face any difficulty, you can directly contact us. You can also write in the comment section of this YouTube video, and we'll answer all your queries there. If you have any other doubt, you can contact us in the office number. You have all the details. You can look at the poster again. So the details are given. Second, you can visit our website regularly. So there is a job section which we keep on updating regularly. So based on that, you will see the details about the private jobs, the government jobs. You will see what are the requirements for them. If masters is required, then in how many jobs masters is required, and for that, in what field masters is required. So all such kind of analysis you can also do while observing the type of jobs you are getting. So this way, do the analysis and be prepared for GATE exam. Remember all the miscellaneous things which Raja sir shared with you in the starting. No one will tell you those things. They are behavioral. They will definitely help you. Those are tried and tested things. So with that, best wishes to all of you for your GATE preparation from all of us at Career Avenues Delhi. Thank you.